Now the channel is live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Adventure on So Many Levels. We're going to play some Root, the role-playing game from Magpie Games.
Yay!
Yay!
I am Christiana Ellis. I am the game master for tonight. Our players for this game of Root are Paul Weimer.
Hello, I don't have a catchphrase yet. I don't have a character.
Nobilis.
I don't have a catchphrase either, so we'll have to see. Good. That's definitely got to go on the character sheet somewhere.
Lee Burdett.
Hey!
David Archambault.
Hello.
And we will also have Jason Banks as a player, but he is unable to join us tonight. And we should have him next week. But tonight, the plan is session 0. What does that mean? Well, it means we're introducing the game. We're going to talk about what kind of game it is, what the setting is like, and then we're all going to make some characters. Does that sound like fun?
Yes. Wonderful.
Well, good. So let's then begin by talking a little bit about what is Root, the role-playing game. Well, it is based on a tactical strategy board game by approximately the same name. I'm actually going to, just because, I say approximately only because this one's a role-playing game instead of a board game. So it is Root, the role-playing game. But it takes place in a setting called the Woodland, which is an area of forest which has within it many different clearings. And these clearings and the woodland in general are occupied by the denizens who are what we would call anthropomorphic animal people. And if you're imagining somewhere in the vicinity of Disney's Robin Hood or the Redwall series by Brian Jacques, is that saying that right? Jakes?
I think it's Brian Jakes.
Jakes. Then you're in the right neighborhood. We have characters that they wear clothes, they use armor, they make weapons and use them, but they are also animal people, and that is the full extent of them. There are no humans in this game. And further, all of the animals we're talking about are generally wolf-sized or smaller. Any animals that are bigger than that would tend to be slightly fantastical or mythological. So like a bear or a deer, say, might fill the role of something like an ogre or a troll in this setting. But by and large, this setting is, vaguely medieval, maybe a few little tiny touches of steampunky flavor. And then we have, we have we have Mighty Murr in the chat. Welcome.
Oh, yay! It's Merlafferty.
Yeah.
Hi.
Well, the VOD for this session will be available on YouTube afterwards. So, as I was just saying, where was I? The flavor is vaguely medieval, maybe tiny, touches of steampunk around the edges in terms of people building maybe elaborate clockwork sorts of things. But mostly there's no magic in this setting. And so what we have are a lot of these clearings that are populated primarily of denizens. The primary species in question are foxes, mice, and rabbits. Those are the most common. However, there are species of all varieties here in the woodland. There's lizards and cats and wolves and badgers and beavers and all these sorts of things that you might expect to find in the woodland, and maybe some that you might be surprised to find in the woodland. And so we're going to find out, tonight as we build our characters, what species each of them is planning to be. The other thing to know about this game is that it is, in fact, I don't know why I say it like that, it is what's known as a powered by the apocalypse games, which means that the mechanics largely are based on a game called Apocalypse World. All dice rolls are with 2d6, and you have 2d6 and some sort of a modifier, and you roll the 2d6. If you get a 6 or lower, then that's a miss and something bad happens. Notably, in this game, if you miss, something bad happens. It's not just neutral, it's something bad. 7 to 9 is a weak hit, like you mostly get what you want, but it's complicated in some way. And then if you get a 10 or above, then that's a strong hit. You get usually what you want plus a little extra gravy. And that's the basic mechanic of it. But this game has a number of mechanics that, while perhaps not unique to role-playing games in general, are, distinctive in this game. And those are various ways that gear works, or harm tracks, and various moves that are specific to this game. And so we're going to talk about all of that. But the other key element of this game and this setting is that it is a region at war. There are a lot of different factions that are all vying for control, each in their own way. Now, the core game, the core book, as with the core board game, has 4 factions, and those are the Erie Dynasties, the Marquisate Decat, the Woodland Alliance, and the Denizens. And then in the board game, one faction is also the Vagabonds. But in our role-playing game, you all are the Vagabonds.
We are a faction in our own.
Yes, indeed. You are. Exactly, you are. And that's how the game functions, honestly. But the expansions added a number of other factions, including the Riverfolk Company, the Grand Duchy, which is moles, the Lizard Cult, and the Corvette Conspiracy. Now, we all had a conversation before we started our session 0, where I kind of give a little bit of a brief description of each of these factions, and asked our players here which they were most interested in and which they were most excited to, work with or against. And the primary factions that we concluded that we're going to use in this game are the Marquisate, the Corvette Conspiracy, the Riverfolk Company, and the Grand Duchy. And then, of course, we have the denizens themselves, who mostly just want to, do their job, feed their family, and have their house not get burned down. That's mostly what the denizens are concerned with. And it just so happens that all of these other factions are conspiring to make that difficult. So I'm going to describe just a little bit about each of those factions. So the Marquisate, well, actually, before I get into the specifics of them, another important tone thing to recognize here. Sorry, I keep getting distracted by my dog. Rocket, off! Apologies. It's important to understand in this game that all of these factions that I just mentioned, none of them are all bad, and none of them are all good. There are good people and bad people within all of these factions. However, it's true that based on which faction they are in, the way that they are good or the way that they are bad is probably going to differ from other factions. So, for example, if you have a good person from the Marquisate, they still believe in the Marquisate's cause, but they also believe in helping people, and they might be believers in the good things that the Marquisate can bring to the woodland, and there are some. But they're going to have a loyalty to that faction nonetheless, and at least wanting to make it as good as it can be. So just because you might work with that person and they're good and you believe in their cause and you do a project for them, does not mean that when you go to the next clearing over that the local Marquisate representative in the new clearing is not bad. Right? And so your reputation with each of these factions can be a complication no matter what you're trying to do, because you're going to be dealing with individuals everywhere you go, even when they represent factions. So the primary factions that are trying to wage war here in the woodland, one note is that the default game assumes that the woodland had previously been under control of the Erie Dynasty, and that is who had been in charge until the other factions started to try to push them out. What we're going to say for our setting, because the Erie dynasties are not a big factor, is that this area of the woodland was always on the very outer edges of their reach, and that they have not been a significant force in this area for some time. Like, there might be a few structures that are, that were built by them when they were here, but they've had their own Civil War squabbles for some time, and so it's been a long time since they were actually in charge of anything in this area. So you have a lot of clearings that might have once been part of the Erie dynasties, but the denizens have ruled themselves for quite some time. But we do have the Marquisate, the invaders from another empire led by the Marquis de Cat, industrializing, forceful, opportunistic, and pragmatic. The Marquisate is at heart a foreign power come from far off Le Monde de Cat to conquer the woodland. But it grows more tied to the woodland each day. It builds new structures across controlled clearings. It recruits new soldiers and agents directly from ruled citizens. And it forces the culture of the Marquisate upon the woodland, even as the Marquisate itself changes to adapt. And then we also have, sorry, let me get to the equivalent portion of our other factions that are going to be the primary factors here. The Riverfolk Company. Across the woodland, denizens can watch riverboats laden with goods making their way across the waterways. These boats, captained by species of all types and crewed by merchants and mercenaries, make up the Riverfolk Company. Their merchants set up shops in clearings along rivers and streams, selling literally anything a denizen could want so long as they can afford the price. The riverfolk accept barter and trade for goods and services, but some company representatives are pushing for the use of river scrip, a note denoting that they owe a good or service to the holder, as a general currency within the woodland. And so, although primarily they think of themselves as outside of these factional wars, they do want to control the economy of the entire area, and that is not going to always align with the desires of the other factions. We also have the Grand Duchy. Traveling via expansive tunnel networks, the moles of the Grand Duchy spend most of their time underground. They work tirelessly to construct tunnels from their neighboring realm into the woodland in hopes of one day overtaking the resource-rich forest. The duchy's ultimate goal is to subjugate the denizens after invading and conquering all the clearings. If they weren't so mired in political intrigue, it might even be unstoppable. Instead, the Grand Duchy moves slowly, needing approvals from the appropriate ministers before it can even take the smallest actions. In the meantime, the duchy builds up propaganda to convince the woodland denizens how wonderful being a duchy citizen is, anticipating that the denizens won't realize how few of its promises it can truly deliver on. And last, the Corvette Conspiracy. Whispers and hushed voices of a group of frightening, betaloned figures meeting in shadowed places to pursue dark ends. The Corvette Conspiracy are a criminal organization bent on changing the woodland from the shadows. They remember what the rule was like under the Erie dynasties and have no intention of letting it happen again. They work in secret, plotting and scheming to infiltrate clearings and gain control. Those in power are aware the conspiracy exists, but paint them as nothing more than delinquents. While it is true that they resort to criminal means to raise funds and enact plots, what they truly seek is to control the woodland by hook or by crook, and to ensure their families that are never treated poorly again. So those are our primary forces, all seeking to control the woodlands. And as mentioned, good people and good denizens and bad denizens in each. So you might find that in one circumstance you side with one faction over another, and in another circumstance you would feel the reverse. It's all going to be up to you. So the last, I guess, one more piece on setting, and then we'll start talking about who all you are. The question whenever we're dealing with animal folk, as we are in this, is that there are a fair amount of questions that kind of come into play here. And I think I really like some of what this game says about those things, which is that the balance leans towards fable, right? Like, think about the fable of the ants and the grasshopper, right? Do you worry when you hear that story that, like, well, but they're acting like people? It's like, yeah, so what? This is a fable. But the other element here is once you start getting into, like, well, what are the details here? So, for example, I'm trying to. Here we go. The fiction. Here we go. It says a lot more stuff than this, but the part that I really enjoyed is if we ask questions like, what do foxes, notable carnivores, eat in the woodland? Do birds have hands? Is a wolf the same size as a mouse? And the answer that it provides to those questions are, what do foxes eat? What everybody else eats, probably a decent amount of bread or hardtack. Do birds have hands? More or less. Is a wolf the same size as a mouse? Depends on the wolf and the mouse. Right? And so what that means to me is that certainly you could make a character that is a great big field mouse, right? That's allowed. But it also would raise the question of, like, if you're choosing your character to be a mouse and choosing to make them big, that should say something about that character, because we would expect it to be more common that mice are small compared to other species. But we're also not talking about real world wolf versus real world mouse. We're talking about people sizes, right? But nonetheless, the species you choose should be reflective in some way, either by comparison or contrastion. That's not right. What's the word that I'm thinking? You say compare and contrast, and then comparison and
Contrast.
contrast, I guess. So the point being that when you choose your animal, that should mean something. You could have it be just aesthetics, but ideally, you should be thinking about, like, what does that say about your character? Mm-hmm. Right? Now, that does not mean that all members of foxes all act the same. This isn't, not to just say it's Zootopia, but the whole point is that, like, there are certain expectations based on certain species. They're not universally true, but sometimes there can be generalizations that people create expectations. Mm-hmm. And so whether you are delivering on those expectations or subverting them should be a conscious decision, is my point. With all of that said, let's start talking about the Vagabonds. Now, in this game, this is a story, a game about a band of vagabonds. And vagabonds in this context are people or denizens. The game tries to use denizens instead of, like, people, because we're not humans, right? Like, that sort of thing. But you are denizens who do not have a permanent home. You travel around, you do various things. And in general, the reason for that is probably because you have, like, left something behind, or, you have some other reason that you don't just settle somewhere. Now, part of knowing that answer, that's specific for your character, is part of what we'll do when we do character creation. But the big point is, all of you are a band of vagabonds, which means that you have decided to travel together as a group that does not have a permanent home and is going to travel around doing whatever you want. The other thing is that although certainly I am not opposed to characters having a sense of justice and a desire to see good done in the world, you're not heroes exactly. You're people who need to get the job done. The game is really optimized to have you be a little bit more like, the world's complicated. Sometimes you kind of have to choose a side to put bread on the table. So occasionally you might find yourself taking a job from someone you don't entirely approve of, because what else are you going to do? But that's not to say that you can't stand up to tyrants when you come across them and that sort of thing. But you all are people who are trying to get by in the woodland. And sometimes that means that you're not just out there doing altruistic things and hoping that the world will just supply bread for your table and, a whetstone to sharpen your sword and so on. The idea is that this game, the setting is designed to lean a little bit more anti-heroic than just standard typical do-gooders. So once again, like exactly where you fall on that spectrum is somewhat up to you, but I would encourage you to take a look at the drives section of the character building when we get there and really consider giving your character something a little bit more gray than you might in some of the D&D games that we've played. All right, so any questions about the overall like game or setting before we start getting into the meat, the character meat?
Not
Oh,
I.
lead us to the character meet.
All
Lead us to the
right.
meat.
We want character barbecue.
All right.
Oh, boy.
So, there is a checklist. There's basically 12 steps to follow when you are building your character. And the very first one is something that's common with all Powered by the Apocalypse games, which is that you choose your playbook. And this is a bit like choosing your class in Dungeons and Dragons. But in this game, your playbook tends to be less about the things that you can do and more about the kind of person that you are. And that sort of thing. It's less about like, oh, well, if you're this playbook, you're going to do these things. It's more like if you are this kind of person or this kind of denizen, then this playbook is the best fit. That sort of thing. And so with the two books that I have available as part of, so I guess I will briefly say that I am working from materials that I obtained through the Kickstarter for this role-playing game. They are not publicly available for purchase yet, but I'm excited to get through them nonetheless. But so we have two books. We have the core book that has a number of different playbooks in it, and then we have the Travelers and Outsiders book that has some expanded playbooks, and all of those are available to you. So I have offline already provided these materials to our players here. Do any of you should I read down the list, do you think, or do any of you just already know which one you want, and if you want to say which one it is and why? Or this is the process. So now we're going to go and we're going to pick your playbooks, everyone.
Why don't you
I've
read the
already-
list, at least for the listeners and
Sure.
viewers, so they know what
And
we
I
got.
think,
So.
yeah, and I think this gives a little bit of the flavor of it as well. So, for the core book has the playbooks: the Adventurer, the Arbiter, the Harrier, the Ranger, the Ronin, the Scoundrel, the Thief, the Tinker, and the Vagrant. The Travelers and Outsider book has where are these?
There are playbooks in.
Yeah, no,
The-
I just the list is in a different spot on that book, so I have them.
No, yeah, but the playbooks that appear in one of the PDFs you sent us has slightly different than the ones in the core book. And
Okay.
I wanted to know which supersedes.
Okay. Give me a moment.
Okay.
The Travelers and Outsiders book playbooks are the Champion, the Chronicler, the Envoy, the Exile, the Heretic, the Pirate, the Prince, and the Raconteur, the Raider, and the Seeker. Now, I don't know what you're talking about, Novellas, as far as the so the difference is in some respects is there's the play materials that has basically like blanked versions of the character sheets, as opposed to the ones that are in the body of the core book that just have like suggested things filled in on them. I don't know if you mean something other than that.
What I mean is that the playbooks and moves document, quick start, is slightly different.
Do not use the quick start. We're not playing the quick
Okay.
start. That's not what we're using.
Okay. I will delete that document so it no longer confuses me.
Fair. Yes, that was an early version that they put out before they made available the full book.
Got it.
So yeah, that might have some like older versions of things. Does anyone already know what playbook they're interested in, and why?
I do.
Okay,
I'm choosing a chronicler.
Chronicler.
Yes. You know, purpose of going into the woodland to learn about things, to, maybe possibly have a great work,
Mm-hmm.
and needs to travel to do so.
Very nice. So yes, the head the log line for chronicler here in the book is an erudite, focused vagabond whose interest in history and learning can work woodland wonders.
And I'm picking the Vagrant.
And you want to tell us why?
Uh,
You don't want to tell
Um,
us why.
not yet.
Well, so the log line for the vagrant is you are a charming survivor vagabond, using words to get out of dangerous situations, perhaps even setting possible predators upon each other to keep them away from yourself.
I
Yep.
picked the Harrier.
Okay.
Just it fit the kind of character that I wanted to make.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
So that sounded and it sounded like a lot of fun.
sure. So the Harrier is you are a quick, enterprising vagabond, racing easily from building to building and clearing to clearing without anything stopping you, perhaps finding yourself in places others would rather keep secret or hidden.
I was vacillating between a couple, keeping a couple in reserve in case
Sure.
someone picked mine first, but
Uh-huh.
I do get my first choice, which is going to be the Ronin.
Oh, nice.
I like the idea of a wandering warrior who's left his lord and now is now trying to find a life for himself here in the woodlands.
Right. So the Ronin, you are a skilled, willful vagabond, formerly a servant of a lord in a different land, now masterless. You come to the woodland to live as a free vagabond. Very nice. Okay. So, the next step, once you've selected a playbook, is to choose a name, species, and various details. Now, the sample playbooks that they have in there offer examples that you can choose, but you are not limited to the ones that are presented on those character sheets. Those are just examples, but they should be examples of the sort of flavor that we're looking for. So, species obviously can choose whatever you like, but it offers suggestions for demeanor and details as well. And so we're using a spreadsheet, a Google spreadsheet for everyone to start entering their character details there. So for demeanor is, of course, your general personality, and in particular, it's going to be things like if a stranger just met you and had a conversation with you for a few minutes, what would be their impression of what kind of person you are, that sort of thing. But then also details would be like distinctive things about your armor or the way you appear, like do you have very fancy clothes, or are they tattered and torn, or do you have a prominently displayed fancy locket of some kind? These sorts of things is what it's looking for. And so feel free to go ahead and take a little bit of time to start filling those in, but certainly as soon as you feel like you're ready to shout some out, please do so. All right, well, if no one's ready just yet, I'll kind of give an example of some of what's presented on some of the... Oh, yeah?
Part of some of my decisions are waiting to see what other people choose.
Okay.
Well, hi. So, like, give name and the demeanor and details I was thinking.
Yeah. So if you have those already in mind.
Okay. Hi, Nigel Farnboots.
Nigel.
Sly, thoughtful, and always having a buck on him.
Okay. Do go ahead and choose like enter your pronouns for that character as well, and that's exactly the sort of thing we're looking for. I was just going to say like some of the things they offer as examples on the character sheets, like for the adventurer. It offers choices for demeanor as like charming or diplomatic or agreeable or stern. And then for details, it might say formal or colorful, multicultural, simple, medal of service, beaded jewelry, carved flute, pouches with pretty stones, these sorts of things it's offering as suggestions. And obviously, if you want to take a little bit more time with your name or anything like that, we can always come back to that later. We don't have to report it now, but if you are ready, please do so, and then once we have that, we'll move on to the next step.
Arban Ironwing. Even though he's left the service of his lord, he's still very gruff, and he wears a very militaristic sort of demeanor. He might have left the service. The service has definitely not left him.
Okay. What species?
He's an Amur Falcon.
Okay. So the just we will make this explicit as we continue, but just because based on our setting as we described it, are you from the Erie Dynasty? Do you think?
I think so. I think that makes sense. That he's come from the core out to this this less tractable part that was never really under control and now is in the plunge in the middle of all this conflict.
Sure.
So he's escaped his lord and wound up in the middle of a war.
Well, it could
Oops.
be, so, whether you escaped your lord could be a question that you could certainly make as a character, but another aspect could be, for example, that the reason that the Erie dynasties are not so much a factor as much as they used to be is because they're kind of bedeviled by civil wars. And so it could be that your master was killed.
That's true. I didn't think of that. That's a good idea. Let me think about that.
I think
Is anybody
Oh,
is anybody else considering a fox or a cat?
No. Because the one that I'm making, her name is Peppa Pika. To avoid copyright infringement. And she is a magpie, and she is enthusiastic and energetic, and I don't know quite what she looks like yet, but she's a Eurasian magpie, so she has blue wings and a black head
very nice.
and a white belly.
My character is a capybara.
Yes, I was going to come back because I realized we hadn't mentioned that either. I love that pick just because capybaras just have such a such an obvious emotive demeanor to their faces. It just, you look at a capybara and it's just this facial expression. Yes. One question along the lines of what we're talking about earlier in terms of how the animal people work is a reasonable question of can birds fly? And the answer is yes, if they're not carrying too much stuff, because this is a game where, yeah, the birds fly. And in fact, in a given clearing, it might be that, the bird neighborhood is way up in the trees, for example. But it also might be that they don't always live way up in the trees because it's inconvenient to have to go down to the general store that's on the ground. Nobody wants to deliver up there. But in this game, though, the way the mechanics work, unlike D&D, where if one character could just fly and the others can't, that seems like a little bit mechanically imbalanced. In this rule set, it's usually really not that big a thing. It's more just you work through it in the fiction.
Yeah.
All right. So, Nobilis, do you have your...
Yes. My character's name is Lancelot Vent. He is a fox. His demeanor is low key, but he dresses in what I'm calling faded finery. It was nice clothes at some point, but it's kind of old and worn and tattered and faded and patched and not in as good shape anymore. But he acts like it's still just as nice as it was when it was brand new. yeah, that's the demeanor and details and species so far.
Very nice, very nice. Okay, great. So now that we have you've all picked name, species, and details. The next is to choose where to add +1 to your stats. Now, every one of these playbooks has 5 stats, and those are charm, cunning, finesse, luck, and might. And I think those are relatively straightforward in terms of how they're used. But one thing that's worth noting about the luck stat is that pretty much anytime you're trying to do something that you don't have some other special move for, if you're trying to do something challenging or dangerous that you don't have a specific other move that makes more sense, you're pushing your luck and you roll with luck in those circumstances. So that's how the luck stat works. It's basically, so for example, a character sheet that has a high luck stat is because it's someone who's not necessarily, extra skilled at other things, but they just always kind of seem to scrape by, that sort of thing. But so each of those stats begins based on the playbook with having some be, either 0 or -1 or +1 or +2, but you get to choose one of those stats to add +1 to, with the caveat that none of them can be higher than +2. So you can't take a +2 and make it a +3, but you can add a +1 to any of the other stats.
Okay. I was saying that it was a +1 to 2. Huh, I'll have to change.
No, it is just to one of them.
So I could add +1 to my -1 from the playbook and make it just a flat 0.
Correct. That's, yes. Or you could add it to a 0 to make it a +1, or to a +1 to make it +2. But you cannot add it to a +2 to make it a +3. There are certain moves that can do that. That we'll cover moves in a moment. But that otherwise +2 is the maximum right now. The other thing is that if you have some idea what moves you're going to select, which is one of the next steps, that might be part of how you would inform what stats you want to use. If you have questions about that, I can ask that. But if you look on the spreadsheet here, I've added a tab for moves quick reference. So you might look there at the basic moves and see which stats are used for each, to give you kind of a general sense of which stat you might want to have be your highest stats or whatever, based on how you envision the character.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so definitely as an example there, some of the basic moves are in figure someone out, and that would be rolled with charm. So would it persuade an NPC. But, engage in melee would be rolled with might. Or target someone, which would be like firing a bow and arrow at a distance, would be rolled with finesse. And, trust fate, you roll with luck. Trick an NPC or read a tense situation, you roll with cunning. These are how the stats generally work. Any questions about those, or you're just deciding on numbers, which is fine?
Deciding on numbers.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm reading through. I found one, my first move that I want to have.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we will, I believe that choosing the moves is, this list that I have here, choosing the moves is actually a little bit further down, but that doesn't mean you can't have some pre-awareness of which ones you're likely to go for.
Right. And
So,
let's see.
Is everyone is everyone close on that? I don't want to move on if you don't have to finalize it right this second necessarily, or if you change your mind on something, you can go back and fix it. But just to keep things moving, is everyone ready to kind of start talking about some of the other things, or do you need more time?
I'm ready.
Okay. All right, so the next thing is choose your background. Background questions help fill in detail about your character's history. Answer each background question, either choosing an option and fleshing it out with some details or describing a different answer. Your last two background questions have you mark prestige or notoriety. Mark it on your reputation track as appropriate. I can help with that if you have any questions about that. But by and large, mostly everyone has the same background questions. They say, where do you call home? Which is to say, not where are you right now, but where did you come from? Why are you a vagabond? Whom have you left behind? And then the reputation related ones are, which faction have you served the most? And that mean these are specific to the factions that we have in play. So for example, Paul's character may have served the Erie dynasty and may have a positive reputation with them, but they're not really a factor here. So what we're talking about here is more like, who in this area have you served the most? And then with which faction have you earned a special enmity? Like that you have attracted the ire, so to speak, of some given faction. Which is, going to be pretty unavoidable in a lot of cases, because if you're helping one faction, you're often going to be making another faction mad. That's just the way it works. You have to choose sides sometimes. So on this basis, one of the things that I'll talk a little bit about the reputation system while you guys are answering all of that. The reputation system in this game has you mark what's called prestige when you do something that would impress or be valuable or welcome to a given faction, and you mark notoriety when you do something that would make a faction angry. And your reputation is something that travels with you, because it represents, hey, if you worked with some denizens to burn down the Riverfolk Company trading post in one clearing, well, the people from the Riverfolk Trading Company are probably going to pass on down the river to the next clearing over. Yeah, there's a bunch of people who matched this description who burned down our trading post. And so then when you travel to the next one over, the people with the Riverfolk Company might have heard about that. And that's how the reputation is basically going to work. And so there are certain moves that are rolled with your reputation as the modifier. And so, for example, when you meet an important NPC for the first time, you might roll your reputation to see what you know about them and what they might know about you. So when you are marking prestige, so everyone starts with the reputation for each faction at a +0. But then if you mark 5 prestige, then you increase your reputation modifier to +1. And then if anytime you want to ask a favor of someone in that faction, you roll with a +1. And then, but when you have marked 5 and you increase the modifier, you clear it all to 0. But then when you've marked 10 more, you can raise it to +2. Then you clear it. Then when you've raised 15, you can add it to a +3. But you're also working with notoriety. So let's say you have been working on improving your reputation with the marquisate in one clearing, and you get it up to +1. But then in the next clearing, the marquisate region in this clearing is really bad, and you feel like you have to oppose them, but you start getting notoriety. Well, if you mark 3 notoriety, then you have to decrease your reputation score by 1. So if you had a +1, but then you mark 3 notoriety, now you have to reduce it to 0. And so you can end up with negative reputation with a given faction as well. So in this context, the way that you're reading your or filling out this background question, sorry, I have it, I'm scrolling through different moves here, but you're going to, whichever faction you have previously served the most, you're going to go ahead and start with 2 prestige for that group, which gives you, gives you part of the way towards getting a +1 reputation. And then you're going to mark 1 notoriety for whichever group you've previously annoyed. So does anyone have want to talk about like your answers to these background questions? bearing in mind that you might have a simple answer for now and then elaborate it in either in your mind or on the sheet as we move forward.
As I've been going through this, I've kind of been working on Lancelot's general kind of overall character. Yeah, okay. Anyways, he's the kind of guy who blows through town, probably leaves it a little worse for wear economically, but at least some of the people are happier for him having been there. Con artist.
Some might say
Something of an arrow.
Some might say that.
I might say, yeah.
Uncharitable folks. might say,
Yes.
Uncharitably.
He doesn't feel like he deceives people so much as presents them with the fantasy they want to hear. At least that's what he tries to do. So his where do you call home is a place far from here. Why are you a vagabond? I feel a deep wanderlust. He just keeps on moving. He left behind his family. The faction he has served most is the Denizens, and the faction that has earned a special enmity is the Corvette Conspiracy.
Okay, great. So you can see on the character sheet there that above these background questions are areas where you can pull down prestige and notoriety for each faction. So when you all have answered that, you can go ahead and put 2 prestige for whichever faction you helped and 1 notoriety for which one you've annoyed. One quick note, and again, none of this has to be nailed down right this minute because we're going to talk a little bit more in detail as we go about the specific details of this patch of the woodland. But right now I'm kind of just glancing and it looks like everyone's kind of either from far away or from like, the middle of nowhere, essentially, in like the forest, as opposed to one of the clearings. I would encourage, obviously, your character is your character. You can choose whatever you want, but I'm going to encourage that if at least one of you has, I'm going to encourage all of you to have some connection to the area. If, just because that way, people, it can be interesting for storytelling if, for example, one of the clearings you go to has the whole family of one of the characters or something like that. Doesn't have to be. There's no obligation. I'm just noting everyone's kind of defaulting to, I don't know this place yet, so I'm far away. And I want to encourage you to not choose to be somewhere far away just because you as a player don't yet know the setting, because we can resolve that.
Okay. Well, that I went ahead and updated mine to Oakenhold, which is in the bottom right-hand corner of our map.
Yeah. So so for that matter, does anyone want to take a look at the map really quick? And I can answer a few questions about each community, each clearing in this setting, and help you determine if which ones you think you might have been to or be from, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I've just picked that one because there's so much stuff. I mean, there's woodlands all around it. It seems to be a thicker patch of woods. It doesn't. It's not like right on the river. It's not really close to anything except for maybe one other town. And so I just like that for the location.
Sure.
And so I said Peppa. That they also have a deep wanderlust, but I think that kind of arrived from the fact that they are from this fairly small, fairly isolated place, and so they heard that there was more to this whole community than just this one little town, and she wants to see it all.
Right. Sure. So what I was going to say is that part of what I've established as I've been filling out the world building is that Oakenhold is kind of known for a few things. One is that the trees tend to grow significantly larger in that area. No one's really quite sure exactly what the scientific reason for that might be, but just Oakenhold is kind of known for having bigger trees than most of the woodland. It's also kind of up into the hills a little bit, and has it is a dominantly rabbit settlement clearing. Like there's mostly rabbits there, along with a sprinkling of various other species. But so a lot of that town is kind of burrowed into the hills a little bit, and it's considered amongst all of the different clearings in the woodland. It's like one of the more defensible ones, kind of by its geographic location, and that's part of why it's got its name.
Yeah, and that sounds kind of ideal for
Okay.
what I'm thinking about Pippa's personality and how just she's a magpie.
Sure.
Ooh, what's this shiny thing?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, yeah, and so at least right now, it is one of the few clearings that has not really seen any of the war yet.
Right.
No one has come through there yet.
Yeah. So the people that she left behind were her family, and the faction that she served the most is actually the Marquisate.
Marcusat, yeah.
Marquisate.
Okay.
As a messenger,
Sure. Yeah.
because she's fast, she's speedy, she can get messages between clearings, and that they give her they they pay her to do that, and that's what she wants to do. So yay! And I think the faction that she's earned the most enmity with is the Corvette Conspiracy, because they don't want those messages to get through.
Sure. Yeah. So I think I think all of that's great. And so one of the things that it reminds me to talk a little bit about here is the distinction between clearings and the forest. It's meaningful mechanically in a couple of ways, but the main way to think about it is clearings are where you have little like villages and towns. And that's where most denizens live, because it's cleared out, and it is mostly safe from things that are not other denizens. Then there are the paths which connect the various ones and are fairly well traveled, but even still, you get a lot of denizens who don't ever really go anywhere else. But the paths are fairly well traveled by merchants and others like that. But then there's the forest, and this is like the deep forest where the map says there's forest there. That's about what you know. But that's not to say that the people who aren't willing to brave a little bit more risk or danger might know that there's all sorts of things in there. There might be ruins or a bandit hideout, or just, hey, what's this strange old abandoned workshop going on here? Like there might be all sorts of things hidden in the forest, but also other things hiding in the forest that might not necessarily be looking to be found, or might themselves be looking for something to find, and you are it, and that sort of thing. So traveling into the forest can be a source of forage. Like you can forage in the forest and get materials that can help you, recover supplies and make a little money and that sort of thing. But there is risk anytime you go into the forest, and most denizens don't do it very often because it's dangerous.
So between of the two towns that have like connections to the outside world, beyond this map, between Rooston and Fire Hollow, which one is larger?
I think that Rooston is larger. I think that is the one that, like, if you were going to go to where the heart of the actual remaining Erie dynasty is, that's that way.
Okay.
It is also currently the foothold of the Grand Duchy's presence in the woodland, but that's relatively recent. So, like, if you were someone who left that place a long time ago, that wouldn't have been true then.
Okay, so I changed my where do you call home
Okay.
to say a place far from here, but I have a special feeling for roosting.
Okay. Sure. Yeah.
And we can go into exactly what that is
Okay.
if we want to.
Yeah, and so Fire Hollow, on the other hand, like that's the way that you would go to get to the Marquisate, the Cat's like main territory, like the Monde du Cat. Although the Milltown is where they've set up their stronghold in this area. So
Well, that's good to know because I decided as far as one of my drives is to have revenge against. I'm sorry, Lee, against a Marquisate. Yep, I have named my enemy. My enemy is, I'm stealing from Shakespeare. Colonel Tybalt of the Marquisate is my enemy.
nice.
And when I first came to the woodlands, fleeing my master's assassination during one of the interminable civil wars of the Erie Dynasty, Colonel Tybalt imprisoned me for a while. And as I'm a wanderer and I like to travel, that was the most horrible thing. I escaped quickly, but I've sworn revenge against Colonel Tybalt, who was one of the leaders of the Marquisate incursion into the woodlands. And I'm going to get revenge on him for imprisoning me because birds have to be free.
Hey, I'm just a messenger. Don't shoot the messenger.
Well, and so, but so that is a perfect illustration of what I'm talking about, where, like, the people that Lee's character Peppa worked for the Marquisate might have been genuinely nice, friendly people who really care about the denizens, and they really do believe that the Marquisate has a lot to offer the people here in terms of helping them to, achieve some progress instead of kind of just stagnating and actually, develop some industry and that sort of thing. They might be actually really nice people, and really they might also disapprove of the actions of someone like General Tybalt, right? But they're part of the same faction, right? So that's the sort of complexity that all of this is designed to produce. But so do you have the rest of your background questions established, Paul? You had a lot of detail there already, for sure.
I do. So I'm formerly from the River Castle in the Erie Dynasty. After my master's assassination, I came here. I generally live now at Gap Refuge because the mountains remind me of home. I want to build a master's life. The questions for Rowan are slightly different. So what happened to my last master? He was assassinated. I've kind of worked with the Riverfolk Company because that's kind of scratched my itch to see new places and be new things. And the faction I have an TR for, the Marquisate.
Great. So about Wind Gap Refuge, that is this location right up here in the mountains, as you mentioned. It is primarily I believe, I'm trying to remember, I believe that is it's also a primarily rabbit clearing. It is home to a monastery. And hang on, I actually have notes. Maybe I should look at them instead of just trying to remember. Got a classic, Indiana Jones's dad of, I wrote it in my notebook so I wouldn't have to remember. So it has a monastery there that's kind of known for. But otherwise, it's kind of remote up in the mountains. It's hard to get to.
Not if you can fly.
Well, I mean, even still, it's
even so. It's an effort.
Yeah. And for that matter, like even if you're flying across, like flying over the forest is still traveling through the forest essentially mechanically.
Yeah. It doesn't get me out of anything.
Okay, I think that was everybody except for Nigel.
Yes. Where he calls home a place far away because he is not from Woodland. As people are, this place is not well known.
Sure.
And he's a vagabond because he seeks to create a great work about the Woodland so he can inform his home about it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, nice.
And whom have you left behind? His library. He was basically, it wasn't like his actual family, but it's who he had the most connection with. And he served the Riverfolk Company most because they actually got him here,
Mhm.
and he had an entanglement with the marquisate, where I'm not entirely sure what it was, but I think the serving and the enmity are connected in some way.
Right. Sure. Sure. Okay, great. So now, having chosen background and answered background questions, the next is to choose your nature. Now, bearing in mind that the playbook that you're looking at probably offers two to choose from. But what I'm going to say right now is you are not limited to those necessarily. Those are two that are probably well suited for your playbook, but there are others that you can choose from if you like that are in the Travelers and Outsiders book or from the other playbooks. So if you were interested in looking at those, in the Travelers and Outsiders book on page 45, there's oh sorry, this is Nature's. I was about to give you the page reference for Drives. But so like basically, certainly there are two that would be well suited that are there on the sheet. But feel free to look at page 50 in the Travelers and Outsiders book for some new natures that you might consider. And these are, or you can just look at any of the other playbooks to see if they have one that you like better than yours, the ones that are there. But in particular, the way that the nature functions in this game is that it's supposed to represent a general sense of your personality and who you are. And mechanically, it's something that you can clear your exhaustion track when you do whatever that nature thing is. That's what it is. So like, for example, the Ranger is a character, and two of the suggested natures there are Loner and Cynic. And so for Loner, it says you would clear your exhaustion track when you enter a dangerous situation alone without backup or assistance, right? And so in the fiction, that's something that could complicate the story, but it lets you clear your exhaustion track, which could be very useful. Your exhaustion track basically is something that, it represents mechanically just kind of like, makes sense in the sense of saying, are you exhausted or not? But it's what you spend essentially to do some of your special moves or what might be taken from you from attacks from others. So essentially what we're looking for the nature here is what's something that your character might occasionally want to do that simultaneously makes the story more interesting and also mechanically will allow you to clear your exhaustion track. Does anyone have any questions about those?
No. Let me look at these other ones. I was thinking Survivor, because he survived the Civil War. He survived imprisonment. So that's one of the two defaults for Ronin. Is just he covers allies retreat. He's the last man standing. He Amorous he him pronouns. But let me look at the other ones before I decide on that permanently. But that's what I'm leaning towards.
Sure.
I like the one that they gave us.
Oh yeah, I mean, like sorry, I didn't mean to talk over it.
No, for the Harrier, that you have the choice of dutiful and competitive. And I like both of those. I just can't figure out which one it was. I picked initially dutiful, but I'm wondering if competitive might be more in line with what Peppa would actually do.
Yeah, because now I'm looking at this list from the new book. Commander also works. It's like back on Alicia, well, like a military officer, which sounds completely like me. That made me more of a party leader than the last man standing. So the question is, what are we all going to do as a group? So the question is a commander more fitting with what the other characters are, or is it more Survivor, the better fit for what we're looking for as a party, as a group of characters together? Now I'm considering both.
Oh.
I may bounce off what you all will do and decide between
For
the two of
mine, I picked Observer You enter a dangerous situation to try to witness a significant or a secret event or to meet an important individual.
You like to watch.
So,
Yeah.
so when you with that, so I'm sorry, I think you just said it, but I was distracted. What would be the trigger for clearing your exhaustion track for
You
observing?
enter a dangerous situation to try to witness a significant or a secret event or to meet an important individual.
Yeah, nice. So that's definitely something we could imagine creating a fictional circumstance where, you know, you see, so you guys are feeling like, yep, it's time to leave. We need to get out of here. But then you see people dressed in some sort of weird uniform all headed into the longhouse, and you're like, hmm,
Hmm.
maybe you want to see what that
Or
is. Oops.
like, or I could see like, you know, this area is known for is basically marks that territory. But I see an individual that I know works for the Riverfall Company, but they shouldn't be here.
Hmm.
Maybe
Hmm.
instead of fleeing, I should go and say, hey, what's going on?
Yeah. All
You're
right.
trouble, Capybara. You're trouble.
I would like to grab the extrovert nature off of the adventurer playbook.
Okay. What does
Because
that one? What?
clear your exhaustion track when you share a moment of real warmth, friendship, or enjoyment with someone.
Nice. That's definitely something where it's not so much that it creates fictional complications, but it's certainly something we like to encourage in terms of role playing with your friends.
Right. And I mean, it's not just because it seems like one that would be easy to arrange,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but that's part of it. But it also just kind of fits my image of the character better.
Sure, sure. No,
As
that's
as
why I made a point of mentioning that there were others that you could choose. You're not limited to
yeah,
the two that are there.
yeah. Does the same go for drives?
Yes, yeah. So there are new drives listed in the Travelers and Outsiders book that you can use those as well, or for that matter, if there are some that honor another playbook that you feel like are better. Now, so drives is the next thing to talk about after you choose your nature, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Did you settle on one for Peppa, Lee?
Um, I have a really hard time playing charismatic people. But I think I'm going to go with competitive,
Okay.
which is clear your exhaustion track when you take dramatically unnecessary risks to show off.
Okay. Yeah,
Nice.
I think I'm gonna have to be a survivor just to be able to cover all you. Put you all out of danger when you go doing something stupid.
Very nice.
Maybe not so much Lancelot, but you,
Yeah.
Nigel, and you.
The other one that I was thinking about, if I was going to choose one, was actually the one from the Thief, which was no, keep going down. Which one was it? Combative, which is clear your exhaustion. No, that wasn't that one. There's one where it says when you grievously insult someone that's in authority.
Yeah, I can. That's certainly one that
Yeah.
could work, but I can definitely.
It's rebellious.
Oh boy.
When you grievously insult, defy, or anger figures of authority.
Sure.
Yeah, no, let me skip that one.
Well, like that, like obviously a lot of these are all come down to what kind of character you want to play, and I think there are a lot of players who might be really excited to do that. But not everyone wants that to be what they're making themselves do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to. So I'm a
competitive is
magpie.
fun.
I'm going to just draw attention to me
Very nice.
and just.
So that we mentioned drives. So drives mechanically are something that are what you need to accomplish in order to create an advancement, which is to like sort of this version of leveling up, where you can choose a new move or you can increase a stat potentially. Some of these sorts of things are what you do to advance, and you advance them by completing the trigger mentioned in the drive. You can only each drive could only trigger one advancement per session, but it also, like, in cases where there's any doubt about it, it's basically me that gets to arbitrate whether what happened was really worthy of the advancement or not. So, for example, if your drive is to, let's see, advance when you topple a tyrannical or dangerously overbearing figure or order, if you see a kid picking on another kid and you go shove that kid in the mud, you didn't really topple a tyrant, right? You know, that's so that's kind of what those are. So the drives, there are 4 that they offer on your initial playbook, and obviously those are the 4 that they're kind of suggesting is well suited for how they imagine that playbook to be played. But once again, you can choose the others if you like from either the other playbooks or the new list that's in the Travelers and Outsiders book. And those new drives, I believe, are on page 45 of the Travelers and Outsiders book.
Yeah, I'm looking through because I'm not sure I like Clean Paws. I like Wanderlust, but I'm looking for a good option.
Right, and everybody is choosing 2 drives.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've got Wanderlust and I've got the Revenge because I mentioned General Tybalt before.
Yeah,
So
I think all of us took Wanderlust. I got Discovery, advance when you encounter a new wonder or ruin in the forest. So as long as I stick to David, I'm gold.
Yeah.
we'll be wandering around, righting wrongs.
That is specifically, though, like when you discover these things in the forest, that is something that happens when you are traveling between clearings through the forest, not on a path, which is
Right.
more dangerous, but is the thing that can lead to that happening.
Excuse me.
Well, I figure that's something that might happen. So
Yeah.
Okay, I went back to thrills. Advance when you escape from certain death or incarceration.
Okay.
Yeah. With this group, that's a guarantee.
Well, all the more reason that it, things that are designed to get your character into sticky situations are what make for compelling story.
Question about advance. You say that it's once per session, but is that once per drive per session or
Yeah.
once per session total?
No, so each drive could trigger an advancement once per session. So up
Okay.
to 2 per session if you manage to trigger both things. Yeah.
Okay.
And so, who has their ones suggested? So I noticed that you put Revenge on there for Arbon. Is Revenge one of the specific ones from?
From the Ronin, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was just double checking. Just because, yeah. So I just want, it's good to have more detail about it, but we don't want to lose track of what the specific trigger is for the
Oh,
advancement.
okay. Yes,
Right?
ma'am.
That's what we need specifically tracked. The rest of it is flavor and important for the fiction, but we need to be able to follow the mechanical rules. So for Revenge, name
It's-
your foe. And
and-
advance when you cause significant harm to them or their interests.
Okay, I'll put that there.
So if we hear that, hey, there's this armory that's been being built under orders of General Tybalt.
Yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. We take it down.
Sure.
Or at least I suggest to the group we should stop this. Because some white Marcus, it might be nice, and worked with Peppa in the past. General Tybalt needs to be taken down lots of pegs.
Sure.
Yeah.
So has everybody
Mark.
got 2 drives?
David, did you see Traveler on the list. Advance when you replace a valuable or meaningful item with one that represents the local culture.
I
That's in the Travelers and Outsiders. It's the last one on the list.
there it is.
Yeah, I just with your character that sounded like something that might appeal to you.
There is actually one more on the list after that, which is wanted, but certainly, you know.
Yeah.
So the idea there is that, like, for example, you might have had a certain kind of backpack that you brought from home, but you buy a local new backpack that's a different style than you're used to, and you're kind of learning about the way that this place works by kind of, that's kind of what it's talking about. But
Yeah.
I like what I chose.
sure. Well, no, yeah, we're all just we're just tossing out ideas. So does everyone have their drives selected?
Yep.
Yes, I think we're all set.
Well, not everybody has said them out loud though, in a clear way.
Oh, true.
Yeah,
So,
I did. I chose the discovery, find a new wonder or ruin in the forest, and development, contribute to a lasting development or improvement to an entire clearing.
very nice. Okay. Arbun? Paul?
Oh, revenge and wanderlust. Sorry.
Great. And Wanderlust was when you...
Finish your journey to a clearing.
Right. All right. Lancelot?
Yeah, I took Wanderlust and Thrills.
Great. And Peppa?
I took Wanderlust and Discovery.
Okay. So you're all about the traveling around. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, nice.
We are
Okay.
itinerant.
You guys are going to be hopping around all over the place, I can tell. So bear in mind that one of the things too that can happen as we develop, not saying you're going to want to change them, but one of the, hang on, let me session moves. There we go. When the session ends, every time we end a session, we're going to talk about these drives and ask whether or not we think they were fulfilled in that session, right? So we will determine collectively as a group, with me as the final arbiter, whether or not you get advancements for those things. And then obviously if you did, then you can choose what your advancement would be. But also, everyone can, at the end of every session, you can choose to replace one drive with a new drive from any playbook, replace your nature with a new nature from any playbook, or replace one of the connections, which we're going to do in a moment, with a new connection. So those things, that we have just selected right now are not necessarily permanent. If you ever get to a point, even just in the fiction, where you think it makes sense for your character to want something different, like, for example, let's say you all eventually kill General Tybalt,
Yep.
maybe you would want a different drive after that, right?
Probably.
So that's just to, bear in mind that these things can evolve as your characters do. So next is you're going to choose your moves. Now, while I kind of let you be a little bit more flexible with your nature and your drives, for these primary first moves here, I want you to stick with the ones that are in your playbook. As you get advancements, you can choose moves from other playbooks, but for now, let's keep to the ones that are listed there, please. There's generally going to be a list of them, and you're going to end up, most playbooks get 3 total moves, and you choose from the list there. And these are just things that are going to relate to the specific version of whatever playbook you're happening that your character will represent. I know some of you have been looking ahead at some of those things. If you already have some of those chosen, please let me know, just so we can talk about them and fill the time.
I've chosen Pleasant Facade and Charm Offensive.
Okay. You want to talk about those a little bit?
A Pleasant Facade gives me a bonus if I suck up to or otherwise butter up an unsuspecting NPC. And then I can possibly get holds that I can use in the future to deflect suspicion or aggression onto someone else. Um, and Charm Offensive is in a fight, I can play upon an enemy's insecurities, concerns, or fears to distract them. And if that succeeds, I can hurt them in spite of the fact that I am a terrible fighter. And yeah, I'm still thinking about the third one.
Yeah. I took Fleet of Foot, which lets me increase my finesse to 3. I took Traveler Extraordinaire, which gives me bonuses for traveling on paths or through the forest. Do you want me to go ahead and read the whole
Don't
blurb?
read the whole thing. Just
Yeah.
the general highlight.
Yeah, and and then I took Smuggler's Path, which is good sense for finding secret paths and doors.
Very nice.
So, my character is all about the traveling. I actually built her first concept was as a courier, which is all about the speed, making the delivery, and so being able to get where she needs to go and maybe move around a clearing that might be unfriendly. So this seemed like these 3 seemed like really good choices.
Sure thing. All right. Have you selected your moves for Nigel?
Yes, I have The Worth of a Book, where study your tomes and scrolls to discover old techniques and methods to solve problems. Search the records, examine the documents, records, or sort of notes of important NPC to help figure them out. And Lore Master, when you consult your knowledge in order to understand political conflict, you can get more information.
Great. All right. So, I think everyone said theirs. You were still trying to decide on your third one for Lancelot, Nicholas?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't pick mine yet. Okay, I didn't mention mine yet.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to skip you. Go ahead.
Okay, so I have always armed, which means I can improvise weapons. Knowing a Lord's will, which means I can use might to deal with denizens of status, authority, and power, because I figure wherever Amor goes, he needs to know who's in charge, and so that makes him better to be able to figure them out or to subvert them. And the rules of war, so, because he was a military officer, so if there is come to combat, he wants combat to be relatively honorable and will try to get any foe to uphold the rules of combat rather than just be, every man for themselves. But
well, what that makes me think of is if anyone has played the video game Ghost of Tsushima.
Exactly.
The main character in that can either attack enemies just by charging at them or by stealth, or one option you have is essentially just like marching in and calling them out and basically fighting their best soldier one-on-one. And it's, you make yourself vulnerable, but kind of puts them in the position of like they would look chicken if they just attacked you after that, so they have to fulfill your challenge, but then you're going to wipe them floor with them. But yeah, that's kind of what that feels like too.
Yep.
Great.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. Okay, so do you have your third one, you think, for Lancelot Novellis? Or like bear in mind that like if all of you want to, give this a little bit more thought and then you might refine them or something before next week, that's allowed.
I'm going to take Instigator,
Okay.
which if I trick an NPC into fighting another one, I can remove an option from the list of things that you can choose to have them do on a 7 to 9.
Right, yeah.
So
Very nice. Okay, so the next step, once you've chosen your moves, is to choose your roguish feats. And the way that works in this game is that one of the general moves that you can do is to attempt a roguish feat, and there are a number to choose from. and there are some new ones in the new book. So like but the new ones from the new book, I've put them in the reference on the moves quick reference tab in the spreadsheet. There are roguish feats and stuff there, and weapon moves and so on. But the ones marked with an asterisk are there because they're from the new book and they're intended to be. You can choose them when you advance, not to begin with. But that said, if you wanted to make a special case for me that one of them in particular is just perfect for your character conception, we could talk about it. But generally, these are the sorts of things that you might be good at as a particular character. So the types of roguish feats we're talking about are things like acrobatics, blindside, counterfeit, disabled device, hide, pickpocket, sneak, sleight of hand, these sorts of things. And so generally speaking, the way that works is your character sheet is going to offer it might just specify certain ones that you have, or it might ask you to choose some from a list depending on the playbook. And so the way that works is whichever roguish feats you have selected, when you want to do that, you will do the move attempt roguish feat. Otherwise, if you don't have those, anytime you want to try to do a roguish feat that you don't have on your sheet, that's when you're going to roll with luck instead. Which also just means, though, that if you have built a character that has a high luck score and a low finesse score, generally that's going to be what you want to do anyway. But that's supposed to represent a character who's really kind of just all over the place and just kind of trusts on things working out.
Mm-hmm.
Bearing in mind, though, that the difference in this case is that the trust fate move that you roll with luck has higher consequences for it not going well than attempt roguish feat does. Which is why, it's not just automatically better to do it that way. So, does anyone have choices to make there, or are you just, if not, then let's just say which ones you have, and we'll move on.
I have a choice of 4.
Okay.
Wow.
Oh.
Man.
Disarm, harry, quick shot, and trick shot. And so I
No.
looked them
Okay.
all.
So those are weapon skills.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's
no,
okay.
I don't. No. So
Roguish feats.
roguish feats. I only have 2.
Yeah, I think that's often the case, but it varies depending on the playbook that you're playing. So
Yeah.
If no one has choices to make and it just says start with marked feats, then just let's have you say which ones those are, and then we'll move to the next step.
Lancelot has pick, lock, and sleight of hand.
Nice.
Nigel has counterfeit, disabled device, and pickpocket.
All right.
I just have one, which is ironic given his war thing. It's blindside. So when people don't act with the rules of war, he's pretty good at hitting somebody from behind hard. So if you don't play by the rules, he will murder you.
Yeah. And Peppa has acrobatics and sneak.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody else is doing the pickpockets and the picklocks and stuff like that, but she's the sneaky one.
Yeah. Great.
I can imagine basically like a parkour combined with flight.
Parkour is actually one of my move sets that I could get.
Oh wow, nice.
Mm-hmm.
I decided not to do that when I traded it in for Traveler Extraordinaire, because that seemed like the
Sure. Okay, so the next thing after roguish feats, and bear in mind that the reason that you only have some to start with, but there are lots of others, is that one of the things that you can do with an advancement is to choose a new roguish feat. But the next is weapon skills. And weapon skills, it's a little bit important to talk about them because when it comes to combat, there are certain basic weapon moves that everybody can do, regardless, like you can attempt it regardless of what stat you're dealing with. So those would be engage in melee, whether you're doing it with your fists or with a melee weapon. There is grapple an enemy, which is obviously like wrestling, that sort of thing. And then target someone, which is ranged, right? And each of those has a range associated with it. Like, so if target someone means that you do that move when you are at far range, which means you're too far away to be attacking someone with your sword. Like, that's the general sort of way to think about far range. And then close would be, you're in the same room with them. You could kind of lunge in their direction and get to them. That's close range. Intimate is when, like, you could hold their hand. That you're that close, right? So,
Nose to nose.
yeah, exactly. And so, for example, grapple an enemy can only be done at intimate range because it requires you to be able to grab them. Target someone is assuming that you are far enough away that you have time to kind of draw and fire a bow, and you're not dealing with too much in the way of point blank range sort of thing. Engage in melee is also straightforward, can be done at either close or intimate. But there are a whole bunch of other weapon moves. But the key to understanding those special weapon moves is that in order to do them, you need to not only have that weapon move as one of the selected weapon moves on your sheet, but you're going to need to have a weapon that also has that tag. So, for example, the point blank range weapon move, if you've got a longbow, probably that longbow is not going to be the best sort of weapon to try to do point blank, right? So, but let's say you have a special longbow that's designed to let you do that somehow, right? We're going to talk more about weapon tags and how they work in a bit. But the key there is, in order to do a special weapon move, you need to have it on your sheet, and the weapon has to have that tag. There are some exceptions. For example, improvised weapon doesn't require you to have a weapon to start with because you are improvising something from the environment, right? But generally though, that's it's going to say in the details for it if it doesn't require a tag. The general rule is you need to have it on your sheet, and then also, in order to do it, you have to have a weapon that works for that. So, likewise, if you have another example of, let's see, like confuse. Well, I don't know. That's the point. Is so essentially that's the key. And we'll talk more about how you get those weapon tags, but that's the requirement. So all of you should have on your character sheet I think most of you have like a list that you're going to be choosing some from. I think a lot of them have, like you're going to choose different amounts depending on your playbook. And it probably offers you a list of 4 to begin with. Actually, I'm looking at the way that it formats some of these sheets is a little different. So I think a lot of the way the playbook's character sheet on, like the PDF ones might have a bigger list with some of them bolded, and you're supposed to choose one of the bolded ones, for example. But that's generally how that works. Does anyone have any questions about weapon skills?
Yeah, since I've got Lancelot as being a lover, not a fighter type, I chose improvise.
Okay.
I chose parry because that just seems like a good proper skill to learn.
Sure. So parry, like obviously, like the is going to be deflecting blows and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
All right, and okay. Anyone else got their?
Vicious strike. I kept bouncing between all the choices. I finally landed on that one because I was thinking Stormer Group, but then that means a great sword, and great sword isn't really sneaky. So I went with vicious strike. So I could use the because the only weapon, because I looked at the weapons that allows you to storm a group, is a great sword, and that gives you a minus to blindside.
Well,
So I thought-
bear in mind, we'll talk a little bit more about the weapons. It has a lot of the pre-generated gear that are examples.
Mhm.
But the way that like those examples are meant to kind of work within the fiction. But if we can come up with a fictional justification why a certain weapon would work for that sort of thing, then we can work with that. But I mean, one of the reasons that storm a group is meant to be with a like a great sword is because it's literally you are charging into a group of people and you're able to hold them all off because you've got this great big sword that you're swinging around and they all need to keep their distance in order to not get their head taken off, right? If you had
Yeah.
like a little like a dagger,
Yeah,
it's going to be
exactly.
really unclear how you would use that to storm a group, right? Like
Yeah.
that's why those are like that. But theoretically, if we can make it work in the fiction, any weapon can get a tag by making it essentially cost one more value, essentially.
All right, I'm going to go back to my original idea, but I know it's not quite the right visual. I kept thinking of when Han Solo charges the stormtroopers in
Oh,
I
sure.
could see
Episode 4.
I could see storm a group working if you've got like a pair of katanas, or
Two-handed fighting. Yeah,
yeah,
that might work.
Or we could even just flavor it as we make it clear that this is a very specific sword that you've trained carefully with for the skills needed to do this. And
Yeah.
that's why that sword that you have trained with in this has that tag, even though someone else using a similar sword might not.
Okay, then I'm going to go with Storm a Group because
Okay.
that was my original
Yeah.
feel, and I'm going to
So
go back to it.
I think it's going to take us some time to go through gear because it's a little bit more complicated unless you all just choose the pre-made gear, which totally allowed, obviously, but not required. So storm a group is when you storm a group of foes in melee. It's essentially designed to just take on a whole group by yourself to one degree or another. And
it's
it's
a completely different set of moves than fighting 1-to-1.
well, right, and and also the intention is a little bit different. It's less about like I'm going to kill this person and put them out of the fight. It's almost more about I'm going to try to frighten this group, put the fear in them, tire them out. It's really more about trying to manage a group as opposed to saying you're killing each individual one.
Yeah,
Yeah, like you have a knot of people that could, basically form cover with each other. You storm them, you scatter them, and then easier to take them on one on one.
Well,
yep, just like Fezzik.
Yeah, but also like in terms of the way the mechanics work in this game is that if you're fighting a group, the group has essentially one like block. You're fighting the group, not 5 individuals.
Yeah.
And so the way the mechanics work there, that's where your storm a group gives you a special ability when that's the case, as opposed to, if you're only fighting one person, you can't really use the storm a group move, right? Makes sense. Okay, so you've got storm a group. I heard improvised weapon. Did everyone else get theirs selected?
Yep, I got my trick shot.
Trick shot, great. So trick shot is that is basically, for example, if you want to be able to hit someone even when they're behind cover, or perhaps hit 2 different people with one shot, or someone's being hanged and you want to shoot the rope, that sort of thing. That's what trick shot's good for. Okay. Who else? Did everyone else say theirs?
Yep.
We got Perry and you get 2. Is that correct, Arbin? Is that right for Ronan? Paul?
I just get 1.
Okay, I just see the spreadsheet has improvised.
Oh,
weapon.
because I got the second because of the previous.
Oh,
thing I took.
no. Okay, hang on. So this is relevant. So
I also get
move-
improvised.
Let,
So I also
oh,
get improvised weapon.
okay, so yeah, let me just double check how that works because okay, yeah, so take the weapon skill. Yeah, you're right. Okay, never mind. Sorry. I was just making sure because some of these are a little complicated. Like they might you only take the move if you already have a certain skill or something like that.
Yeah, because I took
no.
always armed, so
Yeah.
I got improvised weapon. I should have made that clear. I
No,
apologize.
no, you're good. You got it. Okay, so we've got the weapon skills selected, and now if I can have, okay, there we go. Next is spend starting value on equipment. And that's where everyone is going to start with 9 value. And there's a good table in the core book that explains value. It's sort of
Does
the
everyone start
abstracted.
at 9? Because according to the book, I start with 11.
Okay, well that might be 9 is the default. But if your playbook says otherwise, then obviously
Okay.
that's what you do. So the default is 9 unless it specifies otherwise. Value. Okay, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong book. That's not going to tell me the. So there is in the core book a table that gives just like a general sense of. Okay, sure, value is the abstracted currency, so to speak, whether it's expressed in barter or in actual coin or whatever, right? It's sorry, I'm looking for this table. But like, how much is one value, right? Sorry, I'm having trouble finding this table. Give me a
Is it
moment.
183
180. Well, maybe.
in the core? Or 184 on the
I mean-
PDF?
Well, that seems plausible, but let me get there to be sure. Okay. Yes, there we go. Thank you. So one value is like a day's worth of food, decent healing supplies for a non-life-threatening wound, a pouch of coin, a night's rest at an inn. 2 value, a very simple dagger, basic tools for farming or smithing, a traveling cloak. 3 to 4 value might be a basic sword or bow, a simple leather armor, a shield, decent wheelbarrow, a week's rest at an inn. 5 to 6 value would be like a decent sword or bow, good leather or chain armor, a wagon cart, 2 weeks rest at an inn. 7 to 10 value could be excellent weapon, good plate armor, chest laden with gold, an ancient jewelry encrusted cup from a ruin, a simple river-worthy boat. So that's generally what we're talking about in terms of value. So with your starting value, you're going to need to essentially, we're not talking here, first of all, about ordinary little bits and bobs that you carry around. We're talking meaningful pieces of equipment that you own specifically. And that's generally going to be your armor or your weapons or any other like specific meaningful things that you want to have that you would be willing to spend your starting value on. And there are some examples of pre-made equipment. There's some in the core book, and then there's more in the Travelers and Outsiders book that are examples. But here's the basic way that they work. A lot of different weapons, in order to do specific weapon moves on them, or if they were to get damage, have boxes of wear. So the number of boxes of wear a weapon has will increase its value. If you want to have different ranges added to it, for example, if you wanted your crossbow to be good at both far range and close range, then adding an extra range would add +1 in value. If you want to have some positive tags on it that might give you, say, the ability to do a certain special weapon move with it, or some of the other tags available, that would be a +1 value for each weapon positive tag. But you can also offset by taking a negative tag that would have some penalty to it that will, decrease the value. So, for example, if you wanted something that cost more than you could afford, but you put a penalty on it that you feel like you can live with, that would decrease it. So the total value of any given piece of equipment is boxes of wear plus any extra ranges beyond 1, that only applies to weapons, plus positive tags minus negative tags. So generally, you can do that math on any of the pre-made equipment that they show there. You can select just the pre-made equipment if you want, but bear in mind that those wear boxes do not replenish by themselves. They do require repair. And repair can be, for example, you can do the repairs yourself with enough time, but it's going to cost depletion because you're using your supplies to do it, for example. Or you could pay someone to do it with value in a clearing where they have those skills. And so that's the sort of thing that you're going to need to take jobs and, get paid in order to be able to do those things.
Okay, so if I wanted to make a cloak, would that count as armor? And how does
it could? So
okay?
Let's.
Is that I would make it count as armor by giving it wear?
Yes, essentially. That's how
Okay.
how that works.
Okay.
That's how it works mechanically, to be sure.
Okay.
So you could decide in the fiction what it is about that cloak that gives it that quality. But
Okay.
yes, essentially, that's how armor works in that circumstance. Is that if you would take damage, you can mark wear on the armor to instead.
Okay. Okay.
But then,
right.
likewise, like if you mark wear on a sword or something, the wear does not replenish by itself. You would have to fix it.
Okay.
Also relevant for various gear is how much they weigh. Now, this is abstracted in a pretty simple way. Anything that is big enough that someone would be able to see that you're carrying it, assuming it's not like concealed in some unusual way. But like, for example, if you have a sword on your hip, it's too big to go in your pack, so you wear it on your hip or on your back or whatever. That's 1 load, right? Anything that's big enough that people would be able to see that you're carrying it, that's 1. Anything smaller than that, there's no fractional. It's just, we don't worry about anything that's smaller than that unless we're deciding that you have a whole chest worth of stuff like that, in which case the chest itself becomes a load because you can see that you're carrying a chest, right? And likewise, if something is extra big in a meaningful way, for example, a greatsword would generally is often going to have the negative tag that is like heavy or something like that, in which case it does take an extra load, right? So that's the general way that it works out. And so everyone can carry up to 4 plus your might modifier. That's to start. And if you carry more than that, you're burdened. And then double what your burdened limit was, which is that 4 plus your might, is the max that you could possibly carry and still move around.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to create a custom sword, as you were suggesting before, to do what I want. I'm probably gonna base it off of the greatsword here and just change a couple of the tags and come up with a value.
Yeah, there's a heavy gambeson that I really like. It's reinforced. You may absorb injury as exhaustion. 1 for 1.
Okay. Now, bear in mind, too, that for those of you who are birds, if you're carrying a lot of stuff, that's going to interfere with your ability to fly.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So the only thing that so Peppa, she has, I think, outside of just general clothes, she has a cunning hat made by her mom, and a messenger pack, and then her heavy gambeson as armor and a trick bow.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it. So I think that she's definitely not burdened. The load is only like 2. So I think that she still can fly.
Okay. So I will definitely, like, over the course of the next week, be kind of going through some of this stuff in a little bit more detail. And you can also be working on tweaking it because it's a little more complicated here because there's a whole bunch of different tags that you can look at that make something a little bit more specific or more interesting. For example, there's like different kinds of steel depending on you get fox folk steel or mouse folk steel or rabbit folk steel that all do slightly different things. For example, there's I see that. Let's see. I'm looking for some of the.
So let's see how much does that cost. All right, so
Yeah. So the.
it's
For example, I saw that for Lancelot, you took the signature tag. Is that one of the? Um, is that one of the ones from something? I'm not seeing it.
it's from the core book.
Okay,
Signature
well,
when you
I believe you. I'm looking for it. Is all. Um, Advancement and equipment. Okay, so let's see. Sorry, I think this play kit maybe just isn't listing it. Yeah, there we go. So, for example, this signature cloak, because it's so distinctive and memorable, when you earn prestige or notoriety while wearing that cloak, you mark 1 additional prestige or notoriety. Because people it's more recognizable, right? All right. And so bear in mind, too, that you don't have to spend all that starting value right away. You can have some of it as coin still in your pockets, which is maybe not a terrible idea either. Because, as mentioned, you are, unless you make your own camps in the forest or whatever, which does not give you as much rest as if you're staying at an inn, you're still going to want to be able to stay at inns or, buy, pay a smith to repair your sword or all of these sorts of things. Pay a healer to stitch you up.
Good grief, where was that?
boxes aware of extra ranges with special tags with weapon tags minus flaw.
There it is.
So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. I think there's a more. That's cost 7 then.
So I still have 2 remaining.
Okay.
So I'll have 1 left.
Yeah, I have. I saw something in the Travelers and Outsiders that I want, but I have one value, 2. I only have 2 value, and it's 3 value.
Well, one thing that you could potentially do is add a negative tag to it that would make it slightly less good, but cost 1 less.
Yeah. But that would also leave me with no money at all.
It's up to you. I'm just saying that's one of the options available.
Yeah. Of course, I could give up one of my other things, but that's a weapon or some armor. I think I'll just stay with what I have. Yeah.
And not
I
everybody necessarily needs to be armored if you're not expecting to be the one in the on the fray, on the front lines of stuff. But
Well, it's just robes.
Sure.
Yeah. Which, not not going to take a lot of hits, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah, so like as mentioned, ordinary sorts of things that everybody might have, ordinary people might have, that stuff does not cost value. Like we're not making you itemize the clothes that you're wearing necessarily, unless they're special in some way. That's kind of what we get down to, right?
Well, yeah, because I kind of created Empire leather armor, which has an extra box of wear to it.
Yeah, yeah. So like that's a perfect illustration. Well, so armor, like anything that's gonna do something, like have boxes of wear to serve as armor, that's gonna cost value. But I'm just
Yep.
saying, if you were wearing just ordinary traveling clothes, like you don't have to, we don't have to figure out how much that costs.
All right. I think I understand this.
Okay. Does everyone have their stuff settled? You want to just like cover what you've gotten?
Well, I
Or are
I
you
took friendly and signature for a leather cloak,
Okay.
for a total of 4 points, but I'm thinking of adding the inspiring tag as well.
Okay.
The current wear, is that the number of wear boxes that's filled?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it starts at 0.
Yeah. So basically, yeah. That's why there's a box for current wear and max wear. So like, however many boxes of wear are available on the part is what you put in max wear, and then current wear is how many of those are filled.
Okay.
So when you have to mark wear on something, then that's when you would fill that box. All right. So who's done with their equipment and wants to explain what all you got?
I am.
Okay.
So I have a staff, which has the parry tag, so fits with my weapon skill, and blunted, where it does exhaustion instead of damage.
Right.
Or
So
wounds.
essentially, you might be able to knock someone out with that, but you're not going to kill them.
Yeah, which they're not gonna cause trouble. So when unconscious, so yeah.
Yeah.
And then I have robes, which are unassuming. Yeah.
Yeah, which is just fun, given that you're going to be walking around with Lancelot, who specifically made his cloak noticeable and distinctive.
Well, you know what? If if I'm unassuming, they're not gonna
They're gonna
target me first.
Right. Well, and in particular, too, the unassuming is not actually the opposite of the signature tag. What it does in this case is you don't look like a threat. And so until you do something to hurt someone, enemies are going to assume they don't have to deal with you until they deal with the more obvious targets.
Yeah. So, yeah. And yeah, those are the only two pieces I have.
Sure.
I only have 2 pieces as well: the Empire leather armor, and Arbon is the wielder of Elulon, the blue sword, which is a fox steel saber that can do vicious strike, storm a group, and his signature, because it is a named weapon from the Empire that he has carried into this place. So certain people will recognize that sword. It's hundreds of years old.
Sure.
It's not quite the Green Destiny, but if you watch Crouching Tiger, you kind of got the
Yep.
So let's see. I'm just looking at the cost there. So the to add the ability to do vicious strike and storm a group, foxfolk steel and signature. Those are all that would be 4, and then 3 boxes of wear. So that's 7, right?
Yep.
Your Empire leather armor, though. Oh yeah, never mind. You started with more than 9. That's why I was getting confused there. Okay. One thought too is that, especially since, I guess the Empire leather armor is why it has more wear. I was going to ask if you wanted to make it more
so it's basically more durable armor.
I was going to ask if you wanted to make it more distinctive too, but it could be that you like any of the distinctive emblems that might have been on it have been specifically removed, perhaps.
After my master was assassinated, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Because
Cool.
I'm a Ronin now. I
Sure.
don't have a lord anymore.
Are you still working on yours for Lancelot, Nicholas?
Yeah,
That's okay. We can go to
yeah.
Peppa.
Well, I kind of already did Peppa because she's got the heavy gambeson, which absorbs energy as exhaustion 1 for 1. Because it only has one wear. And then, but it's still light. It's only one load, so it's still light enough that she can fly. And then the trick bow, so that she can make those trick shots.
Yeah.
It's one of the actual few weapons that actually does trick shots.
Well, so that's why one of the things that I wanted to mention in terms of, especially when it comes to stuff you're starting with, as opposed to something you might want to try to buy in a clearing, is that if there is an existing bow that doesn't have the tag you want, we can add that tag to it as long as it makes sense, and then it just costs one more. So, but
Yeah,
if you
but-
found one that you like, then we're all good.
Yeah.
All right, great. So we can you can spend some more time thinking about it if you want, Nicholas. No worries.
I think he's going to take something that's similar to the masterwork instrument in the supplement book, but not as high value, maybe less wear and not
Okay.
signature, because I already got a signature item. So,
Maybe a facsimile.
well, instead of masterwork, I'm saying it's a fine harp,
Okay.
and inspiring, and has 2 max wear. So that's three coin value for that. That's 7. So it gives me two in actual coins.
Okay. And you're not bothering with a weapon because you have the improvise a weapons.
Right. And I would be crap with them anyways, because I have most of the weapon moves are either finesse or might, and I have a finesse of -1 and a might of 0. So,
So one of the things that I find just amusing to think about is you have charm at +2 and finesse at -1. And so when it comes to playing a musical instrument, I like to imagine that it's kind of like maybe not the best fingering technique in the world, but you sell it.
yeah, exactly. he doesn't know that many chords, but he knows 15 songs for every chord he knows.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
So it's kind of like certain. I mean, my wife and I go to a lot of folk concerts, and the headliner will be someone fairly well known, like Garnet Rogers is the one we always go to whenever he's in town, who's clearly a master of their craft. But there's always an opening act that's some local kid, and the number of times there's been somebody up there who knows 4 chords and sings the 3 songs he knows that use those 4 chords. I can't count the number of times that's happened. And yeah, this is this guy's approach to music.
Nice.
Yeah.
I just realized in my little sheet that I didn't have a pull down option for -1. That I've just I'm fixing that right now. So
Yeah.
you know what? I'll fix that later. Don't worry too much about it. So you've got your fine harp and your embroidered wooden cloak. So the next step, now that we've kind of been through all the different things, is that we're going to go around and have everybody kind of just, because we've been talking through it and not everybody doing it privately, everyone kind of knows the character, but let's just in turn, each of you give kind of just the high level introduction of your character. If they were to be walking into a room right now, what are people seeing about them? What are they like? What's their deal? Who wants to go first?
Yeah, Lancelot is does not mind being noticed. He's tall and handsome and slick as snail snot, He's uh, uh, the kind of person um, who can talk his way out of trouble, and if he can't talk, he can usually run, and has um, yeah, and he wears a an embroidered cloak that is probably um, the finest thing he owns, um, and is clearly quite proud of it because he wears it even when it's really kind of too warm for it.
Nice. Right. And a fox, right?
And he's a fox.
Yeah.
Yes, he's a fox in more ways than one. I
Clearly.
Yeah. Peppa is. If Peppa walked in, you would notice that she is not actually walking; she is hopping, and she always looks like she's just about to take flight. She's very enthusiastic, but the first thing you would notice is that her wings are blue and her head is red, and she's got a little bit of her white belly showing on the under the gambeson, but what you'll notice is her hat, which is red and orange and yellow striped with ear flaps. It's just pulled really tight over her eyes and eyes and head, and she's just really proud of that hat, and but it matches absolutely nothing that she's wearing. And she's got a messenger bag, and so she's kind of looking. She might be delivering something to you. She might be delivering something to a neighboring, maybe a neighboring family that is in an area that's a little hard to reach.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that bird family sent her to get groceries. You never know, but she's always willing to help somebody out, and just so long as she can eventually keep moving on down the road.
Very nice.
Nigel, first thing you see is that he seems to not be bothered by much. He walks into an inn. He'll look at everyone with a studious gaze, and then take a seat by the fire and pull out his book. And usually more than one. And writes as much as he reads, seemingly.
All right.
That's
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And finally, Arban is an Amur Falcon, which means he's blue in the back and white in the front. He's dressed in Empire armor. He carries a sword. He's got a gruff militaristic bearing. He comes in looking for the exits, size up the people, figure out who's the threats, what's the problem, how to get out if necessary, how to deal with a group. Doesn't say terribly much, but when he's bound to help somebody, he is unfailingly loyal and determined. He does also like to play Go. He doesn't know if anyone here plays Go. The Go is from the Erie Dynasty, so he's kind of short of opponents. Maybe he can talk the Capybara into teaching the Capybara how to play Go, but we'll see how that goes.
All right. So, with the reminder that we are going to have one more vagabond with this party when Jason joins, the last thing that we have to do for character creation is connections, because it is part of the setup for this game that you are not meeting each other for the first time. We could decide how long you've been together as a group, but at the very least, you have known at least some of the others long enough to have had previous escapades with them. And so we're going to now go through your connections. And you have various options for connections on your on your playbook that you're going to choose one of those connections for one of the other members and the other for the other. What I will say is that there are, I believe, a couple of more connections that you can choose from in the Travelers and Outsiders book. New connections are on page 54. And I would say if one of those just seems so much better than one of the ones that you have on your sheet, we could talk about that. Bear in mind, too, that these can often, like, even though it involves both characters, it does not have to be paired on the other side, right? So, like, if, for example, one of you decides that the other is your confidant, the other person does not have to somehow, like, match that, right? It can be true each of you do your own, and it's true for both characters, but you don't have to each devote a connection to that, is the point. And so what I would say is, let's consider, we don't know who Jason's character is going to be yet, but we can maybe consider having a couple of open spots still, right? Just here and there. You don't have to all keep one open, but maybe let's keep a couple spots open just to see if it'll make sense for it to be Jason's character once we know who that is. Okay. Anyone have any questions about connections? Bearing in mind that this is not mechanical generally, this is just flavor, but it is all about, you all are a group who has decided you're better together than apart. Why is that? What experiences did you have with each other that drew you all to that conclusion?
All right. Okay. You know what? Since you're so different, David, with Nigel, I kind of have in the back of my mind, my old master was not that militaristic. I was his strong arm. He was more the explorer and thinker. So I think I'm going to pick my connection Watcher for you. I see in Nigel many reminders of my old master. I am drawn to them even though I watch them carefully. What does it remind me of my old master? How do they feel by my watchful eyes? Because you're the intellectual type. You're interested in things. I think my old master was not so militaristic and not. Oh, we just lost David.
Yeah, hopefully he'll be back shortly. There we go. Yeah. So
yeah. So I think I'm going to pick with David's approval. I'm going to pick Nigel as I'm watching them because they kind of remind me of my old master.
Great. And it's worth noting that even though these are primarily about role playing, there are some mechanical benefits there. So, for example, with Watcher, when you do a figure them out roll on Nigel, you get a bonus. You always hold one, even on a miss. And then the plead with them roll is an interesting idea that I want to just briefly talk about because I think it's a neat game design tool. Is plead with an NP or plead with a PC is basically a rule that's designed to let people get on with things and solve arguments, because essentially what that move is, if two characters can't agree on something, once per session each of you can do the plead with a PC move, and which is essentially like, if you do what I want to do, you get to clear an exhaustion. And so it gives like a mechanical incentive occasionally to just pick something or solve a disagreement. And then sometimes various things can cause, so for example, when you plead with Nigel to go along with you, they can clear 2 exhaustion instead of 1. Right?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Now my other one from the Ronin thing.
Well,
I'm not sure if
so you can have that in mind, but let's go around and kind of do one at a time.
Okay, I've picked one.
Okay.
After Peppa and I pulled off an impressive heist and stole something very valuable from a powerful faction, my bad choices landed me in dire straits. They rescued me, and we've been close ever since.
I will agree with that.
Was that one of the ones from?
That That's from the Vagabond sheet. Yes.
Okay, great. Yes. So when you help them fulfill their nature, you both clear your exhaustion track. So your nature for Peppa is, let's see, I'm trying to remember where I
Competitive.
yeah.
The
So when you help Peppa show off, you play them up. Like I love that actually. The idea that Peppa is a bit of a show off, and that Lancelot likes to encourage that, and like build them up and stuff like that. That seems fun. Okay, great. So that's a good connection. Family. So what about? Do you have one, Peppa?
I don't.
Okay. Well, so the two that you have on your sheet, I'm pulling up
Are professional and friend.
right. So like what we could decide, for example, that you want to make one of those be whoever Jason's character is, and then obviously we could tweak that if it feels inappropriate once we know the character. But so you've got someone, and you tried to blaze a new trail between two clearings, without the support of the major factions, but it didn't really pan out. And then friend, someone and you forged a bond while investigating a ruin. So, well, one of the other characters here also has a drive to investigate ruins, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe that's who it was. You have a friend with Nigel because you forged a bond when investigating a ruin together. I'm just
Okay.
offering. Yeah.
I can do that.
Okay. Nice. So the mechanical benefit you get for that is that when you help them do a move, you can basically help more. All right. Cool. Nigel.
I'd like to think that I have partner as one of the connections on sheet, and maybe it's Arbin
Okay.
because basically we both worked to maybe it was Tybalt that actually I opposed in my first basically.
Well, so it does say
Alright.
who did we depose and why. So that would imply that you succeeded in taking out someone. So it probably wouldn't be T-Balt himself. Could have been someone related, who worked
Or-
with him.
One of his captains or lieutenants.
Yeah. Or
just-
basically, like we have we disrupted part of Tybalt's operation together.
Sure.
I can go with that.
And so, for example, Arbon, you also have partner as one of the connections that's default on your sheet. And just because Nigel has you as partner there does not mean that you need to match it, right? In fact,
Right.
you ideally you shouldn't.
Because I already have Nigel, yeah.
Well, right, and not only that, but also that limits the number of connections when the whole point is we're trying to draw them. Okay, so now you've each made 4. I don't think anyone has selected Lancelot as a connection yet, right?
Yeah, nobody's picked me for anything.
Yeah,
You
and
want
that's because see, I thought I was that was one of the reasons why I wanted to see. Were you saying that maybe we could pick something from somebody else's sheet?
No,
Well,
there are new ones that are in the Travelers and Outsiders one. But are you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is the issue? Is that professional? You don't like that one, or?
Yeah, I was thinking about it, but I actually think I like friend better.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
Like,
but friend is already there. You're not choosing
Yeah.
between those two. You pick someone for each of them.
okay,
So you're not choosing friend instead of professional. Friend is one of them. You have that, and you picked Nigel, or at least that's what we initially said. You could change that if
Yeah.
you wanted. But if you don't like professional and you want professional to be something else, we could do
Okay.
that. But it wouldn't be friend instead because you have that one already.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was. I was looking at somebody else at another character sheet's definition of friend, and I actually
Okay.
liked it a little bit better.
Well, so bear in mind there also are the new ones from the other book where there's battle sibling, confidant, enabler, lover, protege, rival.
Yeah.
I mean, like the idea of the professional one, like if the part of it that is not working for you is you just don't like that you are trying to blaze a trail, you could have it be something else. The idea is just that you worked a job with someone. Like
Right.
you came to have a rapport with one another, doing a shared job with them.
Right.
Yeah, what basically the tag on it, like family and professional and friend and all that, tells you what the mechanics of it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can add some narrative to say how you came to be in that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Um,
How would you feel, Nobilis, if Nigel is a rival with Lancelot?
rival. Let me look that one up.
Well, so rival is when you challenge them to take the mechanical benefit. You challenge them to take a completely unnecessary and excessive risk to prove themselves. They get a bonus to do it, and if they don't want to, they have to mark exhaustion. So I'll let you guys decide that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
I want to think about that
Yeah.
that second one.
So, like, rival actually sounds like something that Peppa's character might have with someone, because you and the vagabond you share this connection with are always trying to outdo each other in increasingly absurd or excessive ways.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I don't think that Lancelot would really be in a rival
Yeah,
relationship with anybody. I wouldn't. No, I don't think it's right for Lancelot.
I was also going to
Yeah.
just say, like, I mean, just based on what you've said about Nigel so far, I hadn't had the impression that he was that kind of person. But, like,
Right.
obviously,
Well, my thought is like, you know, his like kind of can't be bothered impression is like, whoever is serious, trying to get a reaction. Just
I could really use someone taking the protege relationship with me, because I'm not that great at roguish feats. I'm not that great at fighting, and
Would you like to be my protege?
that sounds like fun.
okay.
Okay, let's go with that then. So,
Yeah.
for the listeners and watchers, protege, once per game session, when you spend time training with them, choose one and hold one. Learn tricks of the trade. They choose which roguish feat they teach you. Spar with them. They choose which
Wait,
weapon.
that's we've got it reversed.
Oh,
I would be the protege of you.
well, when you spend. Oh, well, if I pick protege, then when you spend time to. Oh, you're right. Right. Okay. So you're absolutely right. Yeah. So you take protege for me. Okay, that would
Right.
work.
Yeah.
Okay, I will do that.
Okay. So, yeah, I think we lost some of what you were saying about Nigel, David, but like I got
that's fine.
the feeling I get from that rival is like people like egging each other on in a mutually competitive way, not one
Okay.
person just trying to provoke the other.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that definitely does fit better with Peppa. But I'm going to leave that one blank, and maybe Jason's character
Okay.
can fill that in.
All right. Okay, so let's see. We still have a second one for Lancelot to do. We need a second one for Nigel and a second one for Arbon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the default one is partner. Blank and I work together on deposing an authority figure. That's the one that David had picked for me. So the question is, would
Well,
Peppa be interested in deposing authority figures? You sound more of a messenger type, though.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if I should save that for Jason, or we
And-
find something else that
well,
you
and
might.
and I think that it totally makes sense that the incident referred to in Nigel's connection with Arbon could be it, and probably is the same one that would represent Arbon's connection with whoever, right? Like, just because we're trying to broaden this connection web, like,
Right.
it doesn't have to have
Yep.
been just the two of you doing something.
It could have been
It's-
somebody else. Yeah.
Right, like, so it could have been a group thing. It's just that for Nigel, that incident in particular drew him closer to you, and so on.
Right, because we're a group. Yeah,
Right,
That
but
makes sense.
yeah, and so I want to toss this out and just see how y'all feel about it. But I kind of like the idea that the sort of the story of how you came together as a group is something that it becomes a fun game to occasionally add absurd details to an unknown story.
The noodle incident.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking, is that you occasionally have references to it, and every so often it might be fun to add some additional little detail to that story without ever really explaining what happened.
I like that.
You all were involved in something, and it was crazy story. I can't believe it. It's too long to tell right now, but boy,
You had to be there.
when those wolves got covered in honey, I couldn't stop laughing.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, so stuff like that, without ever actually telling the story, it just becomes a thing that you all mutually, in character, know what happened, but we don't really ever say it. But it could be just a fun game occasionally to have your characters converse, like, oh, hey, we'll do the same move that we did back when, back when we took on those Marcusate guards, or whatever, like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So the implication being, all of you know why you came together as a group. You had one big adventure together as a group. That's why you're still a group now. But that's established. That's not something we need to cover in the story. All right. So if we're thinking that that Arbon's partner will be also with Jason's character,
Possibly, yeah. Probably, yeah.
Possibly, yeah.
Hopefully.
and then Peppa's rival will potentially be with that character as well. Then
Yeah.
we still need Nigel's second one. I think with two blank ones that are potentially set for Jason's character, I think that's pretty good. I think that, like, because Protege was Lancelot's move, I mean, I think, like, no one else has really picked one for Lancelot.
Right.
I could have you know,
I like the peer one that you've got there for Lancelot, because our perspectives are so completely different.
yeah.
Right. I mean,
That's
you're
what I was
all
thinking.
book learning and academia and that kind of thing, and Lancelot is absolutely all about, I don't read books, I read people.
That's a good quote.
And kind of you have I was thinking, you have charm at +2, Nigel has charm at +1 or at -1. So it's like that is a very different perspective.
Yeah, no, I love that idea because it's a classic pairing. It's the sort of, like, between the two of you, you equal a functional person.
Wait. I'm I'm Gerald of Rivia. Lancelot is Jaskier.
That's.
Well,
I thought I was Gerald.
well,
Sort of.
but yeah. So like from a certain perspective, like
Yeah.
I mean, in like maybe a mood dynamic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're not the fighter that Geralt is.
No, no.
But like you're the super serious book nerd, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah.
Versus the out and the big and broad theater kid. If we were
Yeah.
doing high school
Yeah.
archetypes here. Okay, cool. So everybody has at least one that someone else picked for their character, right? And then we have two set aside for Jason's character, assuming that it makes sense. If any of them don't quite feel right once we know what Jason's character is like, then obviously we can adjust as needed. And we'll discuss once we're all together, whatever Jason picks for his characters connections. But that gets us to the end of the.
before-
Oh, go ahead.
I got one thing. I swapped out the harp for a staff because if I'm going to be sparring with Arbin, I need something to spar with.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So he's just got a big old stick. I was thinking of taking unassuming for it, but I don't think he's comfortable with it enough to for that to be an appropriate tag.
I also like, not that everything has to be matchy, obviously, but at the same time, you also have like a very distinctive signature cloak. So,
Yeah.
like, not to say that, well, like, that doesn't mean that you couldn't also be unassuming, but they also don't obviously pair, right?
Yeah.
Like, they would notice you, because it's like I said, they're not opposite tags. It's just that, it doesn't look so. Unassuming as a staff is like when Gandalf tries to brings his staff in to see Theoden, right? It's like, surely you wouldn't deprive an old man of his walking stick.
You didn't take his staff. What are you on?
I know, it's kind of it's like. Anyway, okay. Lord of the Rings is fun. All right. So, okay, I think we've got a fun group of characters that it's going to be exciting to explore the woodland with. So, now that we've got our characters, I'm going to bring the map back up. And what I'm going to say is that there is some basic knowledge that people likely would or would not have heard about various places. And I would be happy to answer questions about that level of knowledge. You don't necessarily know all the details of what's going on where, but I'll tell you some of the basics about certain places. But what we're looking for here is an out-of-character decision about where you would like the adventure to begin and what kind of thing do you want to be involved with as we begin. There's no right or wrong answer here. It's just, does anyone have thoughts or wishes or questions about what kind of adventure you want this group of characters to have at first? Like the first thing that we're going to throw them into. Because we have to decide where we're beginning, right?
Yeah. My first thought is to go with the place with the most number of exits.
That's
Which is
tactically sound.
Which is Clutcher's Creek or Sundell, and or maybe Fire Hollow. And Patchwood also has 3 roads coming from it.
I think we want to take either Fire Hollow or Rooston just because, like, we've come from somewhere else and we don't know this area very well.
Oh, well, no, that can be true, but it doesn't have to be true. Okay. Right? Like, it could be that you've all been in this area for a while.
Okay.
Even if you're not from here, right? Like, it's...
Okay, yeah, because I did kind of in my stuff establish that my character has at least a little history in Rooston.
Right, yeah, so what I'm saying is, like, that's part of what
Yeah.
we're deciding right now is are you all brand new to this whole region, or have you been here for a little while? Are we going to start in a place where you have just arrived, or somewhere where maybe you've actually been hanging out for a little while? Because we established that you've had some incidents together. We could be picking up in a clearing after that, right? Where
Yeah.
you are
Yeah.
resting up after your last escapade.
And we wind up in a new town.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that Nigel is the newest of us four, at least. Like,
So
Aye.
that almost suggests the noodle incident was the last thing we did. It says that brought us together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I my vote's for Sundell,
Okay.
Sundell, I can do Sundell.
just
All right.
because I like it's fairly central and I like the name.
Great.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's
and there's
also
Okay.
there's a pretty awesome bridge right there.
There's a pretty awesome bridge right there, and there's
Yeah.
places to go, and there's the ruins to the east through the forest. Yeah, I like Sundell as
Yeah.
well. I think we.
Okay.
So how do you feel, David?
I
We,
think
we
two
just
thumbs-
rolled into Sundell.
That works.
Okay,
Yep.
so do you want to have just be arriving in Sundell, traveling from somewhere else, and having just arrived, having not been like if any of you have been through here, it's been a little while. Is that what you're thinking, or
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Like
fresh eyes, fresh
perhaps
face.
perhaps the noodle incident happened in Iron Vein and we had to get out of there really quick. And Sundell's one of the just an easy place to get to.
okay?
Yeah, we fled across
possibly-
that very nice bridge.
And possibly lose any pursuit. Did we go north? Did we go south?
Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, so we want to say that you're just arriving in Sundell, from Iron Vein noodle incident.
Boy, how outlandish!
I
is
like
this gonna get?
I like that the fact that we have a noodle incident establishes that noodles exist in this world.
Oh yes, absolutely. They
Well, of
definitely do.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Noodles.
Maybe
and-
the noodle incident is literal.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying that like I'm discovering and enjoying that it seems like we've collectively decided that you are going to actually call it the noodle incident.
Yeah.
No, well,
Yes.
clearly it's.
Oh, yes.
We've all agreed already.
Yes,
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so here I'll give you a little bit of what your characters would have seen in Iron Vein, and what you maybe know or remember or have heard about Sundell, and then we can
Okay.
talk a little bit about what you envision. Like, we're not gonna get into themes. We're not writing the story of the adventure you're gonna have, but we can talk a little bit about the kind of adventure you would be most interested in looking into. Like, or unless you would all rather just say, we want to have no idea, you figure something out, in which case I will absolutely do that. But I'm giving you the opportunity to shape the direction a little bit as we begin.
Well, I mean, I would like Lancelot to shine as himself, so I'd like to have opportunities to make contacts with people, make friends, and seduce and or con and or gamble, those kinds of things as the quote unquote face of the party. I'd like to have the opportunity to do that. So,
Okay. So so let me give a little bit of local history then in terms of what you would all have heard. I'm absolutely taking that definitely. Iron Vein, primarily a fox clearing. It's been kind of a roller coaster there because not too long ago, it was suddenly revealed that the Grand Duchy had built a tunnel all the way to right underneath it, invaded Iron Vein, immediately took it over, and then apparently due to some kind of a bizarre paperwork miscommunication or something, they all retreated. and then came back a week later.
Oh,
Okay, hold on. We'll be back.
Yeah. So
Just stay there. Don't. Yeah.
yeah, no, nobody has a whole lot of visibility on exactly what happened, but the speculation and rumors are essentially that the local commander with the invasion force got a little ahead of himself, didn't get all of the full permission, and it was almost having to come back and abandon it and then retake it is almost like a punishment for not getting the proper clearances in the first place, even though they would insist that they are much more of a coordinated effort than that, and it was because they knew that they would be able to retake it that they were able to more strategically deploy their forces elsewhere. Which one of those is really true? Well, it's actually maybe some of both, right? So that's kind of all over the place, but the place is currently under Grand Duchy control. And they are in the process of starting to look into building some degree of fortifications. They do seem like they're more inclined to actually stay a while now. There is River Folk Company presence in town. There's trading and activity and everything. They have not built a full trading post yet, although they're hoping to soon. The fact that there's been all the confusion with the Grand Duchy has made it a little up in the air. And we could go into more detail about some of the other details, but that's the general situation that you're leaving behind in Ironvein. Now, what you know of Sundell? Was there a question?
no.
Okay.
Good.
Now, what you know of Sundell is that it's also a fox town, a fox clearing. It's mostly known for having a lot of really fertile farmland. Like, it's sort of the breadbasket, so to speak, of this area of the woodland. Not that everywhere doesn't have their own farms and growing food, but they kind of have a lot. Enough that they're one of the only places that's able to export food in the area. And so they grow some stuff that you can't really easily get to grow elsewhere. And that's kind of one of the things that people would know them for the most, is that, occasionally you get fancy produce from Sundell that you can't buy local, right? That sort of thing. It is, that not altogether dissimilarly from the Grand Duchy, the Marquisate had previously moved in and taken control of it, but they were a little overextended. And when they didn't have enough people in town to fully hold the city, when some of the local denizens resisted and chased them out. So they are no longer in control of Sundell, but did briefly move in, and that they're probably not satisfied with that. So right now it's not controlled by any major faction, but the Marquisate absolutely has their eye on it.
I imagine that they came via Patchwood.
Yes. And so Patchwood is under Marquisate control, and they've recently built some fortifications there to kind of solidify their presence.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
And so that's kind of what you kind of would know about, like, the local goings on there. Let's talk about whether any of you have ever been to Sundell before. More than just having passed through.
I think Lancelot has been there. He's probably made. No, he's there. He probably knows people there. Whether or not they have a positive impression of him, I don't.
Okay.
He would tell you that they're all his close friends, but
Sure.
it might very well be the kind of relationship like when Han Solo returning to the Cloud City.
Yeah. No. Okay. So I think that you would know then that the current mayor of Sundell is a fox named Reese, Reece. And my guess would be that, they're a pretty peaceful, not laissez-faire, but, building consensus, avoiding conflict sort of politician.
Mhm.
They probably were passively aggressively didn't like you.
Probably.
Yeah. But would never say so,
Yeah.
but you can tell.
Yeah.
And I think that I'll let you decide whether you actually have had any actual contact with them. But there's sort of a notable thief in Sundell that is constantly like doing like raids of a sort where they're stealing fancy things, but like almost less about the value of the things stolen and almost like more to prove a point that's a little bit unclear. There's a squirrel named Nigel that has been spotted around conducting daring break-ins and making it clear that that's who it is, and like daring people to catch them, and then like scampering away to who knows where, probably in the forest somewhere.
But we
I
have a
can-
John Roby.
Well, that and we have a mistaken identity. Potentially.
I'm thinking of the trickster character in Thunderbolt Fantasy, who steals people's pride. He's stolen everything valuable in the world and has realized that the most valuable thing a lot of people have is their pride, and so he does it more for humiliation than for the actual value of the things he takes.
Yeah, I think the general impression from people talking is that they must be trying to make some kind of a point, but whatever it is seems to be incoherent to the average person. If the point is anything more than there is nothing that you can possess that I cannot take away,
Mhm.
if it's anything other than that, people aren't clear on what it is. But they do seem to like
Right, and probably people's views on him depend on whether or not he's actually stolen anything from them.
or even if they just think they have anything that theoretically could be a target, right?
Right.
But yeah, so there's been rumors of this person, this squirrel, leaving calling cards and stealing audacious things, and they're clearly good at it. They haven't been caught, but at the same time, they're leaving notes and they're just behaving in ways that seem incompatible with just actually trying to steal expensive things and sell them.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's kind of what you like. I'll give you those details of things that you might also. We can just talk about like when we meet any random NPC there in town. We can determine if you knew them or anything like that.
Right. As we're coming into town, Lancelot is definitely kind of rubbing his hands and talking about some of the fancy meals he's had there.
Yeah. Because I think that is the food there is good because like they just like they
have the best ingredients.
Yeah, exactly. Everywhere else if you want cucumbers or something like that, well you can get Sundell cucumbers maybe, but not going to be as fresh as if you get them in Sundell.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Okay. So does anyone else have kind of thoughts about what kinds of things you might be interested in having an initial adventure be? And again, I want to encourage you to be thinking thematically and emotionally as opposed to plot story details, if that makes sense. So kind of like Nobilis suggested, wanting people to be able to con, for example, and talk his way past, and that sort of thing, as opposed to saying, let's invent the character that will happen to.
Yeah.
I think for Nigel, one of the basically having mysteries that can be researched is
Okay.
a good thing.
Yeah. Okay.
That's kind of his purpose.
Sure.
Our band's interested in what the Marcusade is doing and the socio-political military situation here. So Sundell is not currently under any control of any
Well,
faction.
They were briefly taken
Briefly,
by,
but yes,
by the
but
Market State,
not-
but they were overextended. So
right.
theoretically, for example, knowing everybody knows that the Market State is going to try to take Sundell again.
Yeah.
And so
So-
theoretically, part of what your vagabonds could do might be to try to prevent that from happening.
I think Arban is definitely in favor of this plan. If he can drag his bound family along with him on this quest to help protect this nice little community from the cats.
You probably don't have to work too hard to get Peppa to do that.
Maybe a trip to Patchwood to sabotage things there.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see what we can do here to make them
Or bolster the
protect it.
defenses.
Because
yeah.
we just leave Ironvale, which itself was undermined. So the whole changing
Undermined.
yes, he's by the underminer. I meant on purpose. So this whole protecting communities and making them be able to resist others. Oh God, I feel like this is Magnificent Seven all of a sudden. But yeah, so it's like
I mean, it's not the Magnificent Seven.
no, no. But yeah, so
But I mean,
you know,
like, yeah, that's exactly kind of what I was like looking for here is like, if all of you think that it might be fun to do a kind of Magnificent Seven kind of thing, like to have a relatively small number of people rally townsfolk in order to try to repel an invasion force.
Yeah.
Like
I agree. I agree with that, Nobelis. The somewhat impressive 5.
Well, I think that the somewhat impressive will be, you're going to have to roll for that.
Sometimes when you have a group name,
Well, no, it's all about branding. It's all about branding.
when you have a group name, you sometimes got to grow into it.
Well, and the other thing is that we have to bear in mind that like your reputation scores are intended to be meaningful here, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
the fact that you don't have extreme reputations with anyone means that as a group you're not really very well known. Like, so that's not to say people might not have heard things. Like, you're going to still make rolls occasionally, and it might be that people have heard something, but it's going to be less likely because you're that as reflected by that.
Yeah.
But so, for example, the repelling an invasion force is the sort of thing might earn you some, prestige with people who don't want it to happen, and notoriety with people who did want it to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So that seems like a fun general direction. The one last thing that I'll say about that is that, like, absolutely, I'm 100% on board. That's a fun kind of story to tell. I love it. But one of the things that is important with a Powered by the Apocalypse game that we all want to keep in mind is that although in general I'm going to be preparing things like characters and settings and stuff like that, I'm not plotting a story. If you guys want something to happen, you're going to need to like make it happen, and we're going to have to roll to find out how it goes, right? Because that's one of the fundamental principles of a Powered by the Apocalypse game is it says play to find out what happens. And so all sorts of things, kind of like in Ironsworn, we might have in mind a general way that the story is going to go. And then it'll just turn out that just due to a couple of bad rolls that you make a mortal enemy of the blacksmith, and now we're in that story.
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing that, can happen. So we'll have to see. But I think as a general sort of mood, the idea that Sundell is in a potentially, Seven Samurai, Magnificent Seven ripe situation. That seems like the sort of storytelling vein we could be existing in. And that, will it work out the way it did in that story? Well, I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to play to find out. But I love that. So I think that gives me some stuff to work with to start us off. Obviously, as discussed, I'm going to work with Jason over the course of this week to establish his character and to get us to at least try to incorporate him more into the rest of the group. And then we'll begin with our session 1 next week. But before we close off our session 0, does anyone have any other questions? I am going to talk a little bit about safety tools as well, but I figured I'd let you do questions first.
No, I don't have any questions.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Thanks, Benny.
So, safety tools. This is just, of course, something that I think is important to consider in all of these sorts of games. If you're not familiar with this concept, it's mostly just the idea of we're all playing this game to have fun, right? We're all looking to have a good time and have fun, but especially because of the nature of role playing and how a lot of it is improvised, it's easy sometimes for even people who all really like each other and want to have fun together to accidentally step on things that make people feel uncomfortable or not having fun in some way or another. And that can happen. Certainly, I don't think I wouldn't be playing with any of you if I thought that you would ever want to do that on purpose, right? So I think as a general rule, we're assuming that that would only happen by accident. But in order to minimize the times that it might happen by accident, that's what safety tools are for. And I'm trying to find, where is this? Let's see. Once again, I don't have all of my my index ready to go, but I think generally what we're going to one of the safety tools that it offers is the X card, which we can certainly work with, and we can talk about if that's one that you want to have implemented in a nonverbal way. But generally speaking, the principle of the X card is just that anytime there is a story development or something like that that is making you uncomfortable in a way that's not fun, and to be clear, bad stuff's going to happen to your characters, but we're hoping that it does so in a fun way, right? In a way that's fun for the player, even if the character might be upset, right? But if something is happening in a way that really makes you as a player upset or not having fun or not wanting to continue, you can just say X, and we will change whatever just happened. We don't have to defend it or justify it. We just do it. And we might talk about it later to determine how best to avoid that coming up again, but it doesn't have to be defended or justified in the moment. And then in general too, I think we can just talk about like if there are any sorts of lines or veils that we want to draw. That's another safety tool of just anything we want to just say, I don't want this kind of thing to happen in the game at all. And that would be a line. And a veil would be, it's okay if this sort of thing happens, but I want us to kind of fade away and not focus too much on the details when it does. So for example, if we wanted to say that I don't want there to be any violence against children, for example. I mean, that's something that I'm not going to put in the game because I don't want it to be there. But that would be an example of a line. But when it comes to something like, I'm just, something where we would just say, I don't mind if this happens, but I want us to just kind of not focus the camera on it. That's a veil. So on that basis, anyone can add to these lines or veils anytime they want, because sometimes you might not think of something and then it happens and then you realize, oh, I didn't imagine that to begin with, but now that it's happened, I feel like I would like that to be a line or a veil.
Yeah. At least a veil, if not a line, on plagues and epidemics.
Yeah.
I can agree with that.
Yeah.
Sure. No problem there. I share that one. Does anyone have any others to begin with? And again, you can also say them offline if you want, or if you think of some later, that's totally okay too. it's important, I think, to establish that, these things. And I want, as game master, to make this game a safe place to voice these things.
I appreciate that. You're very good at listening to your characters and making this a safe place to game and explore characters and stories.
Thank you. I do try, but I know I'm not perfect. So definitely, everyone, safety is something we do together.
Yep.
Safety
Okay.
culture.
Yeah. So, so if anyone has ideas for that later, please bring them up and let me know. You can be offline as well. That's fine. Otherwise, I think that we're probably ready to wrap our session 0.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to get to play with this cast of vagabonds and find out what sorts of trouble they get up to here in the woodland. And I guess we'll have to play to find out what happens next week on so
Yay!
many levels.
Yes.